Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Equinox here at the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, and it is a good morning, good late night, whichever it is for you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is late night. Well, that's why this show is called Late Night, William, because it is indeed the late night. It's also the first day of fall or spring. Take your pick. But either way, happy to be here. It really does seem like it's been so long since we've last chatted, especially because obviously we were doing a lot of streaming earlier this summer, and then it was just convention season en masse, just a ton of conventions, and then got back from convention, went to Vegas, had a handful of streams, but they didn't feel as present as I usually am, especially when I'm doing the remote streams. It's harder to communicate with everybody, answer everybody's chats and stuff. But then for the handful of streams that we did do, they were first looks. And I obviously like doing first looks. We could talk a little bit about this. We did a poll. I did a poll on the YouTube channel. If you filled it out, I appreciate you. But one of the questions I asked was what kind of content do you want to see here as we move into the fall? And number one, I was very surprised by the results. We'll get to this in a moment. But number one was Daggerheart. But number two, very close behind, was First Looks. So I really like First Looks, and obviously you all do too. But they don't let us, talk as much. I'm more focused on the PDF. I'm trying to read, find interesting parts to read. I'm trying to synthesize and learn as much as anybody else is, because the whole idea is that I've never read it before. So I don't feel like they're as interactive of shows as we might otherwise normally get. Long way of saying that between that and then when I got back, I got sick, and I canceled the Thursday stream, and I was kind of offline here for the last couple of days. So yeah, and it's finally the fall, and my birthday's in a few days, so that's cool, fun times. Anyways, long way of saying I've missed you all. It's good to be here, and I was hanging out tonight. I was trying to get some stuff done, and I don't know. I just thought I would throw this up and we'd hang out, and when we can shoot the shit and talk a little bit. One of the reasons that I feel like I've been so busy, maybe, is because I was on this kind of heater of going to all these conventions and going to PAX, and while that was happening, Bob was launching Dragontide, our Dragonbane mega game, which has now just completed its third week of 12 of beta testing. And we expected about 20 people to sign up, and we had about 60 people sign up, so much more people than we'd expected. And, we're trying to figure out how to go through the growing pains. That's why we're having a beta season. But I'm also trying to learn stuff from the design. And I got to be honest with you, it's just a reminder to me of why game design is so difficult. Because you can't make everybody happy, and you try to solve one problem and you introduce another problem if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, you introduce two new problems. Not everyone always, of course, is going to see or engage with the game mechanics the same way as you do, and it's very interesting how people respond differently, just the psychology to different gameplay elements. And again, I have gone on record many times on this show as saying, I am not a game designer. I do not pretend to be a game designer, and I have nothing but infinite respect for what I consider to be true game designers. And again, I'm not trying to throw shade here, but just because you designed a game doesn't make you a game designer. So, which is my way of saying, like, I think that it is definitely a science and an art, and it's something that obviously people have to work at and get better at, and of course, like any skill. But it is, I think people underrate how difficult it is, because, and one reason I think people underrate it, and I realize this. I realized this a couple of years ago when we were doing our Northern Reaches. And are we getting our Midnight Woes? It doesn't look... it doesn't look like I'm dropping frames yet. Sometimes I do, but Jake, but it might just be you. I mean, to be fair, this is the witching hour when the internet does decide to shit out on me, so that's fine. Okay, I will amend my statement as well to say that I agree with Woodland Fellowship. Woodland Fellowship says I would modify. Woodland Fellowship disagrees. I'd modify it. Just because you designed a game, that doesn't make you a good game designer. Fair. That is actually probably a more appropriate way to phrase that, Woodland. So one of the smartest guys I know, and one of the people I respect the most when it comes to game and game mechanics and game ideas, is my buddy Aaron Smith. And he's one of the few people who has played as many RPGs, owns as many RPGs as me, has played way more games if you include video games and MMOs and all that other stuff. So it just has a tremendous... I've played a lot more board games, so I guess maybe it kind of balances out. But he's probably played a lot... it probably balances out. Anyways, the point is, I really respect the guy. But one thing I noticed was that when, I would play with him for years, and, he would implement these rule sets when we were playing our tabletop role-playing games. And I thought they worked great. In some cases, maybe there were some unexpected bugs or whatever. We'd work through them or whatever. But for the most part, they worked great. And I just remember him being very frustrated, and even me being very frustrated when we were doing some of our Northern Reaches stuff, because Aaron would design something and publish it, and I didn't understand. And I realized that the source of the frustration and why it was so different, and this is where I think a lot of GMs and DMs, whatever, get tripped up. It's a lot different when you, the game master, are designing something for, let's say, your group or your table, or even if maybe it's a bunch of strangers, but you're running the table, and you're designing a game rule, and you're there. And you can basically, you understand the designer's intent because you're the designer. You can fix things on the fly because you're right there. It might not even be perceivable as a problem because you just very quickly smooth it over. And I think a lot of people fail to appreciate how difficult it is to communicate ideas through a medium, especially written text, and to have other people understand and pick up your intent. And I think that's something that, we at Knights of Last Call, and by that I mean Smith and myself and Bob, really failed to take into account. So that's something that I think is really, really interesting. And I've told this story before, but again, it's nothing that I didn't already know. I guess I had the knowledge, but maybe I didn't have the wisdom, which is that I remember one of my favorite stories, which Richard Garfield wrote when he wrote this it was like his first book that he wrote about magic. It was called like Guide to Magic the Gathering or something. And he was writing about the playtesting process. And again, forgive me, I've told this story before. And he was working with this is like pre-alpha, very early versions. And he was getting some of his, gamer friends together and some of their non-gamer friends, children, spouses, just to play the game with a variety of people. And, these were the cards were basically, handwritten on cardboard stock and it was very, very primitive. And he was going around and he came up to someone who was not a gamer. And he said, how do you like your deck? And she says, it's really fun. But I think it's a little too strong, especially the card that lets me instantly win the game. And Richard Garfield tried to think like, what spell could that possibly be? Like, are you thinking like Fireball, like Channel Fireball? Like, what game allows you to instantly win the game? And she goes through her deck and she pulls out Time Walk. And if you're not familiar with Time Walk, this is because it's an old card, but it is one of the Power 9, one of the very famous spells from Magic the Gathering that most people know. And I'll bring it up here for people at home who may not know the spell. This is Time Walk. Okay, that's Time Walk, right? It's 1 and a blue. It's a sorcery. You get to take an extra turn, right? You get to take an extra turn. But that's not what it said. in that pre-alpha version. Okay. In the original pre-alpha version, the spell said opponent loses their next turn. And so originally the spell, it did the same thing functionally, right? I take an extra turn or you lose your next turn. And we're used to that, right? We're, like you're playing, I don't know, like Sorry or Uno or one of those games, your opponent skips their turn. They lose their turn. But that group of people were playing that game. And when they read the card that said opponent loses their next turn, they interpreted it as they lost the game. And I mean, these people weren't stupid or anything like that. And Richard Garfield said that was a very just eye-opening moment where he said, oh, this is going to be a lot harder than I ever thought it was going to be. And yeah, I mean, that is a great way. It's a great story because it really highlights how, the designer's intent seems so clear. The spell's called Time Walk. And, we're used to this idea of somebody, skipping their turn or losing their turn in a game. And yet here we go, here we have it. So again, I think it's one of those weird situations where, it's a difficult thing to do. So, anyways, long story short, we've been sort of trying to figure out how to manage and fix. Fix is the wrong word, but we're going through this beta play testing process with our Dragontide game, and it's a bumpy road, and it just really highlights to me how difficult it can be at times. So Derek says, lay it on us, Derek. Now, and by the way, I want to say something. I'm not complaining. If you're one of the people who is playing Dragontide and you've been frustrated or been having any issues with it, I think that I'm not casting any dispersions on you. If anything, I'm saying it's my fault, right? Like, it's Richard Garfield. Richard Garfield wasn't mad at the playtester, right? He said, "Wow, okay, I put this in here and it failed to have the effect that it wanted to." So if anything, I think I'm happy that people are having, some problems and issues and running into things. And it's also interesting how people's psychology and their interpretation of the game, really varies. Again, I don't want to make like a Magic the Gathering, too many Magic the Gathering metaphors, but one of the things we talk about Magic the Gathering is what is a card's ceiling and what is a card's floor, right? Like, how good can it be, but how bad can a card be? And a lot of times when people evaluate something, they tend to focus on the best case scenario where this card is going to blow everybody out and it's going to be a grand slam home run. And then they never really consider the situation where, they play the spell and their opponent, it doesn't really affect the board at all because their opponent doesn't have any of that type of thing, So it's one of those situations where I think also people have a very different way of evaluating and viewing things, and it can lead to a lot of different emotional upheaval, perhaps, in the way that people respond. So, again, fantastic work by all these game designers out there who are really making it happen and responding. And I don't know. Honestly, I don't know how anybody gets a game published that they even remotely feel good about. That's how I would say it, because it just seems like it is just such a fraught process. Yeah, that's a fair way to say it. Level 2 Janitor says, I don't get mad at my playtesters. I just get mad at my game.
Cal Derek tipped $3.
Thanks, Cal.
Worm Coil is overpowered and should be deleted from existence. How that card got approved, I don't know.
Now, see here, that's funny because I don't even consider Worm Coil. I'm assuming you mean Worm Coil Engine. I don't even consider Worm Coil Engine an even remotely powerful card. There's so many ways to exile creatures now. It hardly matters. It doesn't have an ETB effect. Not even really that big of a deal. It's not even that big of a deal. Hey, what's up, RC? Hey, number one, I still owe you an invoice for all of the like the U-Haul truck and stuff like that. I still owe you that. But also, too, I started looking at flights. So let me know when you want me to come out to New York. So let me know. You are here. Anyways, point is, people are playing a lot of Dragontide, and that's really exciting. And we just did a survey because the game works in each game week is a month in the game world, just for diegetic purposes. It doesn't really matter. So every 3 weeks is what we call a season, right? Because 3 weeks is 3 months is a season. And so we just finished the spring season after 3 weeks of gameplay. We're moving into the summer season, and we're going to go for a whole year in the 12 weeks, 12 months, 1 year for our beta before we kind of take it down and figure out what we want to fix and change and, goes and flips it around. So, it's been really, really exciting and interesting, and just kind of figuring out how and people respond and to different things, and as well as that. What's up, Pumpkin? What's going on, buddy? I miss you. I miss you. I miss getting to talk with Pumpkin all the time on the Discord. Feels like you're never there anymore, buddy. He went and got a life and got popular and busy and social, and we don't like that. I am the of removing all social elements from my life and just focusing online and on games. I say as I got back from life. Exactly, Yuval. So, okay. An example. Someone asked for example. I'm going to try to avoid pulling out the whiteboard, but I can't promise you that I won't. So, are we going to get a first look at Nimble? Yes. I don't know about Exodus. Exodus is the WotC sci-fi one. But Nimble, for sure. Yeah. The game designer sent me over the PDFs and the box set. It looks really cool. So, absolutely. I want to take a look at that. Actually, before I get into my game design woes, I did want to point out that, this, I did a poll, or I did several polls, for just, asking people about what's going on with, my channel, because I've been, we were kind of pretty hard in the paint the last couple of months, right? We did a lot of stuff for Daggerheart, and then it was all big tentpole releases. Daggerheart, a lot of stuff. Cosmere, a lot of stuff. We had a Draw Steel week, right, where we did 20 hours or something of Draw Steel in 1 week. And so we just did these really big tentpole releases. And I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm not going to lie. It was really good for the channel, okay? We picked up a lot of new patrons. We picked up a lot of YouTube subs. We got a lot of tips. We got a lot of views. And, like, for example, right now, Twitch is sitting at 100 subs, okay? But when we were doing all that stuff, Draw Steel and Daggerheart, like, we were at, like, 170 subs on Twitch. And presumably those people subbed with Prime and it fell off after a month, and they just haven't been back to the channel because we haven't really been talking about those things. So again, I'm not saying that I don't like doing these little small mini games, but let me be very clear here. Those games, Cosmere, Daggerheart, and Draw Steel, they really did help out bringing in the bacon. There you go. Tomas says, you caught me from Draw Steel and Daggerheart. That's exactly right, Tomas. And yeah, a lot of people came in, and that was great. So I did a first poll, which was 633 votes, by the way. So that's a pretty good sample size for the size of my channel. This is about, if you want to go 95% confidence interval, this is about plus or minus 4 or 5% accuracy. So 95% of the time it's going to be within plus or minus 4 or 5% of these values. So these are, these are good enough for pollsters. These are good enough for political exclamations. So, so I was really surprised at these results, which is that number one was Daggerheart, Daggerhype. Because the question was, what kind of content do you want to see more of over the coming weeks and months? And Daggerheart, Daggerhype came in number one strongly. And then number two was more first looks. And then 3 and 4, almost tied, was Project Shadow Deep and something else. You know, PF2, GM Advice, generic stuff, 4th edition, you know, you name it, Draw Steel or whatever. And this is really, really surprising to me because while I understood there was a lot of people who were really excited about the first looks in Daggerheart, I did not think that would be, you know, over 70% or close to 70%, I should say, of the voting audience. 68% were going to vote for those 2 things. And so that was really, really surprising to me, especially when you consider that this channel, you know, admittedly, I never wanted to be a PF2 channel. But considering that we used to just talk about PF2 originally for like the first year or so that we did our channel, and we have been, you know, we're coming up on 5 years here. But anyways, that was really, really surprising to me. So then I did a follow-up and I said, what kind of, okay, so Daggerheart, quote unquote, won. Now, by the way, there'll never be a situation where this channel will become, quote, a Daggerheart channel or a Draw Steel channel where we just talk about that game. That would be very boring for me. Part of the reason I stopped talking about PF2 so much is because I got bored with the game because I talked about it for basically a year. But so then I asked, you know, what kind of, okay, so lots of love for Daggerheart. What kind of Daggerheart content are you interested in me? Obviously not actual plays, because actual plays are, you know, that's we're definitely doing that. That's part of what we're doing. But 60% said building adversaries, environments, and frames. So 60% of it was very, you know, creation focused. And then 25% was more GM advice specific to Daggerheart for running games. Only 12% was the player-focused elements, which is, you know, new class and new card options. And then there was a handful of stuff, and, you know, something else is a small enough percentage that can almost be not quite ignored, but we can kind of ignore it. But yeah, so overall, what people are really, really interested in is you know, building stuff, building adversaries, building environments, building frames, and less on the player focusing sides, which makes sense. A lot of yeah, exactly. Pumpkin GMs like this channel. Big surprise. So yeah. Agile Monk says, I'm interested in Derek content. Well, thank you, Agile Monk. I really appreciate that. How you doing, my friend? Good to see you. So Jake Online said, I was a big fan of Adam Kobol's YouTube stuff, mostly because first look stuff. So Jake of Online, the first look series started specifically because of a conversation, multiple conversations between myself and one of our long-term patrons and head mod, Ben, who's been on the show maybe like, I don't know, a dozen times. And we were talking specifically about being a replacement to the old Adam Kobol first look stuff. So that the entire series was literally designed to step into those shoes. So that is not by accident. For sure. You're just here for the in-depth studio gaffing content. Yeah. Hey, listen, that's all we got that too. I could talk in detail about that. You're a true passionate fan. Well, I appreciate you. Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm really bad at folding clothes, so I can tell you that. They tend to either get hung up or thrown in a basket. Yeah, I mean, I like doing those too, vintage zebra. I just always struggle with trying to make them actionable. You know, because part of the problem I have with the first looks is I sometimes feel like, look, I'm not going to do this game credit. Even if we talk about this game for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, there's no way I'm going to give this game the due credit, especially because, no offense, when people want a first look, they don't usually pick a 40-page or 80-page RPG. They pick some 500-page multi-book monstrosity, and then I'm trying to sort of, you know, read through them and glean, you know, insight from them. And I'm not saying that I think that they can be useful for all of us. I'm just saying I sometimes feel bad because I feel like I'm doing the games a little dirty. You know, contrast that with Quinn, right, from Quinn's Quest. Quinn goes in, he spends, you know, months reading the game, prepping the game, running the game. It's the only thing he focuses on, sits down, takes God knows how long, writes this extremely, you know, detailed review, and then boils it down and distills it down, which is awesome. But obviously I'm not going to be able, I don't have the ability to do that, you know. So, you know, so I don't want to do these games dirty. Is kind of what I'm trying to say, I guess is what I'm saying. So I'm torn because the first looks feel very shallow, broad, right? Very broad, but shallow. And then when we do these really hyper specific stuff on some of these games, especially the ones that I do have a lot more experience with, then it feels very deep, but it's very narrow. And so again, I worry that about the mix of those two things. How are the Daggerheart GM for short form? Short form, by that we mean, by the way, 15 minutes. So yeah, I have been taking we did that live stream where I gave GM tips about Daggerheart, and I specifically structured the live stream in such a way that we could easily edit that section out and put it into a video and post it. They are doing about as many views as one of my live streams get. The first one got 3,000 views. The second one got less than 2,000 views, and that was published over 2 weeks ago, or about 2 weeks ago. The third one, which was just published 4 days ago, hasn't even hit 1,000 views yet. So honestly, worse than my live streams. You know, basically, I mean, my 13th Age second edition RPG first look, which was 4 hours and 43 minutes long, is almost at 4,000 views. Ironically, it got copyright claimed because I can't remember what I played, but I played something for a few seconds to see if we could actually get away with it. Turns out we could not. You know, yeah. You know, I did a 3 hour and 43 minute video called How I Want to Tweak Daggerheart. Let's Ruin a Perfectly Good Game. That one has almost 4,000 views. It was the Tron theme. That is correct, Thaddeus. So yeah. So basically not doing well, basically. Now, granted, I'm happy to put them up there because it doesn't take me any, I mean, I'm not really doing any amount of work. I open up Adobe Premiere Pro. I cut to the next 15-minute segment. I put it in, I put it out, I export, I upload it to YouTube. The whole process takes me probably less than, I don't know, 15 minutes, start to finish. So it's not really a bunch of, you know, no sweat off my skin, as they say, or sweat off my brow. But again, it's not really, it's not reaching that many more people. In fact, it's actually kind of reaching less people than my my in-depth streams do. So I don't know. So anyways, that's where we're at. Pumpkin says, I think this might be a symptom of you stuck in a bit of a niche. Most folks watch you for the long form content, so they're probably less likely to watch the short videos. That is entirely possible. But I hear from just so many people. I would love it if you actually made videos I could watch. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It could possibly be that like YouTube literally doesn't show my stuff to anyone. So again, I don't really care about the algorithm or that as a way of making money. I'm never going to make money, you know, in the future. Or I'm not going to make money off of that kind of content. I mostly did it as a way of saying like, hey, people have been asking for this. If it would be helpful for you, easier to share, you know, great. I'll do that. Even though it doesn't really, it's just not that much work for me. And it worked out fine. So, all right. We tried doing shorts, Keith, or it was a complete failure. We just don't have the kind of, you know, clickbait. I'm just not that kind of person, you know. I'm not that kind of clickbaity razzle dazzle, you know. Shorts didn't really work. Actually, fun story. Someone shared. I always love it when I get attacked on the internet, which happens a lot. And that's great. I have a comment here. So somebody a fan of ours, a friend of ours, posted a video, polyhedral, on Reddit, on the Daggerheart subreddit. And they posted, let me see if I can bring this up here. They posted our video. This is great. Oh, that's not it. Window. Okay. So they posted, okay. So they posted that, Knights of the Last Call is providing awesome tips for running Daggerheart. This is one on GM moves. And, there's some great, tips and advice up there and all this other stuff. And then, somebody somebody said basically, where is it? Show me the entire conversation. Okay. So, again, me, I love to, when somebody posts something hateful on me, I will, I will pin it on my comment. He says, I don't understand the appeal of this guy. In these videos, he is basically saying that a lot of the rules in the book are like guidelines that are malleable, but he has to make these points by sounding like he's smarter than you. Give me some advice, dude. Don't condescend to me. And I thought this was a really funny comment because what this person is basically saying is, just tell me what to do, man. It's so annoying that you're like trying to like talk to me and like give me understanding and reasoning, and you're trying to like help me understand why we're doing what we're doing, and you're trying to empower me to like make better decisions. And that's really condescending of you. Just tell me what to do. That's basically what this comment is saying. And then, of course I responded and I said, he said, I don't understand the appeal of this guy. And I said, neither do I. He's definitely an ass. But this, I didn't see this comment because it just popped up 41 minutes until I opened up Reddit right now. And it said, at the moment, my comment is -8 and yours is +7. How many alternate Reddit accounts does Knights of Last Call have? I'm, you know what? That is really, you're going to get a thumbs up from me, buddy. That is really good. I love that this person this guy is hilarious. I just think it's just hilarious that, that, and the answer, I mean, obviously I have 2 Reddit accounts, but, obviously, I do not go and publish it, but, it's just funny because rather than be like, oh, wow, I'm being downvoted, and maybe this person is somewhat popular. They're like, this person has to be a bunch of alts. I just thought that was really funny. Anyways, point is, not everybody likes the content. So anyway, I thought that was really funny. That somebody was like, wow, don't teach me, just tell me. Right. It's the classic, right? In fact, I would argue, this is a tangent, but it's late night, so fuck it. Late night, so I'll do whatever I want. One of the problems that I've had in my life, so maybe, maybe this person is correct. And one of the problems I've had in my life, particularly maybe in relationships, is someone will ask me something, and I foolishly presume that they would like to become better educated on that topic. And, the old expression, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So I generally, I'm sort of in the mindset of, hey, if you're asking about getting a fish, you probably, I assume that you would like some knowledge to go along with that fish. And the truth of the matter is, I think some people do not. Some people just want the damn fish. So anyways, don't teach a man to fish and feed yourself. Fishing's not that hard. I did not read down that far. The commenter admits later that they never actually watched the entire video, which is hilarious. It's a 15-minute video, people. It's a 15-minute video. Like this, you read that and you think, Derek, I would never be upset if somebody said, please, do you think I watched the entire 4-hour video? Of course not. And you know what? That is totally reasonable. But if you can't watch a 15-minute video, I mean, my God, what are we even doing here? Oh, my lights are too bright. That's way too bright. There we go. Oh, my God, stop, Derek. All right. Turn down the lights there a little bit. That's true. These are videos. These aren't live streams. You can watch this shit at ×2 speed. There's really no excuse. For sure. That is also very true. My Deggerheart videos are not even the condescending ones. Yeah, I remember reading, I remember seeing something where, like, the average view time on shorts isn't even, the full length of the shorts. No, I have not looked at any of the voids because quite frankly, they released a bunch of stuff I don't recall really caring about. What did they release? I don't remember what they released in the latest void update. But I remember I don't think I was particularly cared about it too much. All right, mind blown. That's all right. You can hang out. Again, this is a late night stream. That's why I don't try to like hype up these titles. It's really just more of like us all hanging out and kind of more of an AMA and shooting the shit and stuff like that. Pumpkin has this problem too, and I've learned to just keep my mouth shut. Usually, yeah, for sure. I've gotten somewhat better at it for sure. But okay, but that's in regular conversations. This is a YouTube channel where I'm talking about education about RPGs. So, please. That's fair. All Spells Rank was the most condescending. Yeah, but also shame on them. Those spells sucked. Okay, a lot of legally distinct Mind Flayer type stuff. Got it. Bunch of D&D monsters. Got it. They're in Creative Commons now. We can actually include them. That's less interesting to me. That's not really game design in that respect. And by the way, we never did do, it's technically on the list to do, but we never did do all spells re-ranked. And I just want to point out that a lot of the spells that I said sucked because they were too focused and they were bad at what they did. It was disappointing that you had to make a counteract check, and they were too specific. And you could cast the spell that is specifically designed to counter the spell, and then it wouldn't even work. A lot of those spells got folded into generic multifunctional spells that have an effect even on a failure. So, Vindication? Well, Aaron, I think part of it is that I'm just not talking about Pathfinder 2 as much anymore. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Chubos, Ryutama. What was that game that had like the random fucked up mechanics that made no sense and were backwards? Break. Do Starfinder all ranked? What would that even be? What am I ranking? Oh yes, Heart. I reviewed Starfinder. I thought it was awesome from a class design perspective. I thought it was awesome. Again, I think I rated every class in that game an A, except I think I gave the Envoy a B+. I don't even do it. I don't recall. I'm trying to even remember Hillfolk. It wasn't even that long ago, but I don't recall like hating it the way that some people thought I was going to hate it, because it was very specifically that kind of game, and I was okay with that. Part of the problem with Heart, which I will admit, is I didn't understand it was supposed to be sort of absurdist humor in like a very British way, so I kind of got that. Oh, yeah, RuneQuest was like being hit in the brick. Or, sorry, RuneQuest was like being hit in the face with a brick. that was painful. Yeah, that I don't know about, B. I couldn't finish the Ryutama video. I fed off of your annoyance way too much. Ryutama has to be on record as being the most like, had to be the most like wild roller coaster of a ride. Remember, because I came in thinking I was going to absolutely hate it, but I was interested enough because they, you know, obviously Fabio Ultima I loved, and it was really based off of that. And then I was like, oh, it's really based off more of this like 2-stat dice mechanic. And then I thought I was going to hate it. And then I was like, oh, actually, this is kind of sweet. This is actually kind of cool. And I was like, oh, I actually kind of dig this. Okay, I see where we're going. And then I remember, boom, we hit that Ryujin. Oh, man, we hit the Ryujin, and I just blew up. Now, see? Look, there you go. Pumpkin says, I think Derek was pretty positive with Hillthoke. And Level 2 Jander says, I thought you were pretty restrained in the RuneQuest stream. Now, it is true that after the RuneQuest stream, Lord RuneQuest Summoner did quit the Patreon, but he rejoined. So, all's well that ends well. You know, it's one of those ones that's worth watching if you, yeah. If you feel in a certain kind of way. Now, there you go. When are we going to talk about implementing Rain's company rules, which were amazing? I did really think those were great into Daggerheart. And by Daggerheart, you meant Dagger Reaches. Break is an OSR type game with an anime art style. Its rules are straight up black hack. Yes, it was very black hack coded for sure. And yes, very anime art style coded. Why haven't you done Mothership? Well, Dan, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is I actually just picked up Mothership at PAX. So I picked up the box set. Hadn't owned it before that. Don't own the PDF. Two, horror is really not my thing. So, but I own it now, and I guess I could buy the PDF. But that's really it. That's really it. People seem to hate when I review games that they know I'm like, people really want me to review games that they know I'm going to probably dislike. And then they're really surprised when I dislike them. So that's why I haven't done Mothership. Also, you know, there's personal beef between me and the designers of that game. Just kidding. I mean, there is, but there's not. But there is. But there's not. But there is. So I don't know if I can give it the fair, unbiased review, you know, first look that it deserves. If I do Triangle Agency, his head will explode. Well, no. Now I can't do Triangle Agency because people will just assume I'm copying QuinQuest. Obvious. Which stream? Ugh, you're reminding me that it's going to be like snowing soon. Not like tomorrow soon, but like in the coming months. And that kind of like makes me very sad. Correct. That is correct. Level 2 Chandler. Take care, Wes. It was good talking to you. Let's see here. Panic says the Ryutama vid was peak. I immediately went and bought a copy of the rulebook from my FLGS. I mean, I got a copy of it around here somewhere. There we go. Ryutama. Beautiful book. Love the form factor. This is how you know this book is not fucking around. Player time. Players 3 to 7. That's a big group. Vintage says, different folk have different tolerances for YouTubers' voices and attitudes. I personally am not a fan of several extremely popular D&D tubers. Is that really what we call them? D&D tubers? I guess. Yeah, that was a bad moment because look, that book is so laid out so beautifully and it looks so beautiful. I do horror if it was on a sailing ship. I don't even think Mothership would fill even an hour of stream. That's true. But that might be, hey, that could be good for us. We could be, is it a one-way beef? It's totally a one-way beef. No, I don't know if it's one-way. I mean, I don't think they have any problems with me. I have no idea what Hell Piercers is, but what level 2 says, one of the moments from your streams that lives on in my head is you reacting to each new page of the character sheet from the Dark Eye. Oh yeah, that was another one that I was like, oh my God, what are we even doing here? How are you on superhero TTRPGs? I dislike most of them, even the ones that I like. That's true. He did a review, not a deep dive, but mine wouldn't be a deep dive. It would be a first look. All right. I withdraw Hillfolk and I raise you Das Schwarz Og. Yeah, that was a tough one. But there were also games that I thought I was gonna not like, and I ended up kind of liking them. Like Hillfolk, I think, was one of those ones. What am I missing with you and Hillfolk? Sorry. Well, what are you missing with me and Mothership? Yeah, basically. My ex, I used to be friends with those guys, and I say friend, it was more like I went to a lot of we moved in the same circles, and my ex was very much closer friends with them. And when we broke up, I kind of was a persona non grata at a lot of those mutual meetups that they kind of headed, and they kind of did it because they were basically like, we're picking her over you. And so that's basically what all it is. I mean, there are two wolves inside of me, right? There's the wolf that goes, I can understand why this mechanic is interesting. Okay? Like, I can appreciate its element of simulationism or what this mechanic is trying to do. But then there's the wolf inside of me who goes, can you imagine actually playing this with human beings at a table? And that's that, a lot of times with the first look, that's the wolf that's winning. And I have freely admitted that as time has gone on, my Timmy element of my player personality has come more and more to the forefront. I am more interested now in, getting to the marrow of the game. I want the game that gets me to my desired level of complexity with the minimal amount of rules and mechanics. I do not want a maximalist RPG anymore because I don't have the time or the inclination to engage with them, even if those are really hyper specific rules. And this is true over a wide variety of gaming types. A great example of this is, I used to play a lot of Warhammer fantasy role-playing. And in Warhammer fantasy role-playing, when you would buy units and assemble units, right, and you assembled them into entire ranked up units. The way that the game worked is like you bought each individual model. So like I could make a unit with 22 Elven Spearmen versus 23 Elven Spearmen. And you could equip them. You could be like, I'm going to pay for the upgrade to give them shields. I'm going to pay for the upgrade to give them better armor. And it raised the point cost per model. And it was very fiddly. And after Warhammer died, and they did bring it back, but after Warhammer died, and some of the games I got into, like Kings of War and stuff like that, you just bought a unit. The unit in the book said Regiment of Elven Spearmen, and there was no fiddling around with it. It was every unit of Elven Spearmen was exactly the same. You didn't have to customize it with, do they have pikes or do they have spears? Do they have broad shields? Do they have, flame resistant hides? like you just bought a unit. You couldn't even buy individual spearmen. You just bought the block. You bought a regiment of spearmen, and I found that to be more than enough depth for me, and that definitely at the level that I wanted to engage at. So, oh no, Strike is a game that I have always loved. Strike wasn't really a first look because I've known about Strike since like the 2010, long before this channel ever came on. Strike and me, we go way back. I love that one. Hellpiercer is a tactical 4E like. Interesting. I have which Exalted do I have? I own this copy of Exalted. I don't know which edition this is.
Sunhawk tipped $95 to go towards whatever future stream goal since I currently just live at work.
Sunhawk, thank you. I don't even have a stream goal up, buddy. Thank you so much. I'm just hanging out. That's awesome. Thank you, Sunhawk. Although that's kind of dangerous, Sunhawk, because I am planning. I don't know if my birthday's Wednesday. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it for Wednesday just because my schedule's kind of crazy. But in memory of my birthday, which is the 24th of September, I want to kind of try to see if we could do one of those like marathon not subathon, but like marathon streams where if you pay, $100, I'll stream another hour. And if you pay $100, I'll stream another hour. And then like see if we can go like a full 24 hours. I don't know. I'd have to come up with some rules, design so we can make it fun and engaging and interesting. But yeah, Sunhawk, that's why I said that's very dangerous. I don't know if that's going to be our next stream or not, but I appreciate you, Sunhawk. We'll put it to something good. Anything you want to look at, Sunhawk? That's a very generous tip. I'd be happy to throw something into the queue for you for that. Exactly, 24-hour stream. It's definitely on my docket. I want to see if I can do it. So, plus, coming into the holidays, if I could raise a little bit of money, that'd be pretty nice. That'd be pretty nice. So let me know, Sunhawk, if there's something that you wanna see. Pumpkin says, I want an RPG to satisfy my Timmy side and to satisfy my Johnny side and have those on alternating weeks. Ideally, also an RPG to satisfy my Spike side as well. But that's hard to MG. That's hard. So to MTG Arena, it is. Yeah. Well, if I'm not Pumpkin, maybe not Spike. But I do think Daggerheart is a Timmy Johnny game. I do think Daggerheart is a Timmy Johnny game. I think. So, I think that's one of the reasons why it struck such a chord with me, for sure. Well, that's also why I was going to do that Panic at the Dojo competition arena, quote unquote, mega game, Ooh, Dark Crystal RPG. That's done. I love the Dark Crystal. It's one of my favorite. I didn't watch the thing on Netflix because I heard it was kind of sucked and I didn't want to ruin the legacy. But as a child, I absolutely adored Jim Henson and I absolutely adored the Dark Crystal. Yeah, there'd be a lot of white mon. We'd have to buy. Well, so I'd have to like prep because I'd have to get because we'd have to do some breaks because I'd have to let my dogs out and bio breaks. And, I'd get like a fridge and I'd probably have like a 12-pack of white monsters in there. We'll try to hit one up every 2 hours. Maybe some, heavy, like chicken broccoli pasta bowls or something like that I can have, a lot of protein, good amount of healthy fats, a little bit of carbs, keep it loaded, keep it going. So, zero. That's correct. Des says, Timmy reporting in, Daggerheart really hits. Yeah. I mean, I think, especially played in the level that I play, the way that I play, it's very much a Timmy game. And there we go. Jake says Panic at the Dojo. Pumpkin does agree that Dagger Heart is a Timmy Johnny game. We got Panic at the Dojo 2nd edition coming out soon. We looked at that like pre-production model of Panic at the Dojo 2nd edition. So I would love a Panic at the Dojo campaign. To be clear, it wasn't really a campaign, right? It was the idea that we were going to have like, you know, a competition, right? You were going to make a party, you were going to have a crew, and it was going to be 3v3 arena battles using the Panic at the Dojo campaign setting. But because even the game, right? Remember when we looked through it, it was like, you know, after the fight's over, go to a skill scene. Everybody make a skill check. And then if you fail, go to a combat anyways. That's what we're all here for. Now, I do wonder, I don't know how balanced it is yet, because I only played it the one time in the beta with the one shot. But I do wonder if draw steel is spiky. You know, you said that's even cooler, to be honest. Tournaments, yeah, oh yeah, 100%. It's very much a competition, very much a tournament style game, or even like from animes. Sadly, like of the handful of animes that I've seen, because I lived in the same house as somebody who was watching animes at the time, I distinctly recall 2 instances of tournaments. One during the original Dragon Ball. I don't know if it was Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball. I think it was Dragon Ball Z. And the other one was in, I was going to say it's the one with the girls with the large breasts, but that's all of them. The anime with the guy who does fire magic, and he's part of like a guild, and they like fight other guilds, and for like there's a bunch of guilds in a city, and there's Fairy Tale. The fact that you guys got that from that is disturbing. You mean the girls with the large plot? That's the one. But anyways, yeah, I watched that, and I remember there was like this really cool tournament structure that was going on in the background of that too. Again, I didn't actually watch the show, but at the time, my roommate was watching it, and I remember being like, okay. That was the most generic description of an anime. I agree. I did not remember the name of it. I would never have remembered the name of it for sure. So I think you need a permanent banner on the screen that defines Timmy, Johnnies, and Spikes. That's probably true. Okay. Let's see here. So we'll just very, very briefly do this here. All right, so we've got Timmy, who turn that down there a little bit. Let's go 48. Okay, there we go. So we have Timmy's, and Timmy's play games to experience or feel something. Okay, so when a Timmy plays a game, they are interested in using the game itself in order to have emotions and have moments and to be excited and just to really kind of dig into that, okay? Johnnies play a game, okay, to express something, okay? So Johnnies enjoy the element of personal touches and creativity. They like being able to show off elements of themselves, of their personality, they use games almost as an expression of their creativity. Johnnies love to play games because it shows you something about them through their play of the game. Okay? Then, lastly, we have Spike. And Spike plays a game to prove something. Okay? So Whereas Timmy plays a game in order to have these sort of emotional moments, and Johnny's play a game in order to be able to express themselves and sort of share themselves with you through the medium of the game. Spikes play games because it's a medium for them to prove something about themselves. It's a way for them, in a sense, to compete. It's a way for them to show that they can use the game as a medium to highlight how smart they are, how good they are. It's kind of the competitive sporting mindset, right? So they approach games as a way of, I enjoy victory because I enjoy proving that I can win. And so Mark Rosewater very famously created these 3 Magic the Gathering player profiles and basically spoke about how the fact that this basically applies to almost every game as being the sort of core reasons for why people tend to engage with a game, from a certain, like, what is it that you're hoping to get out of the game, right? So this is what you get out of the game. And basically when they design cards for Magic the Gathering, they design them so that there's cards that appeal to a wide range of people. And there are definitely cards that you look at and you can kind of go, oh, that's a Timmy card, that's a Johnny card, that's a Spike card, because they want to make sure that everybody sort of has a touchstone or a sort of a moment in the game or in the card. There's a card for everybody, okay, is a way I would put it. And that's what those 3 things mean. Now, that's what they enjoy, okay? But there's also this idea of the why they enjoy. And these are the sort of the psychographics. So that is Vorthos and Melvin. So Vorthos enjoys a game because of the flavor, the lore, the world building. Melvins enjoy the game for the mechanics. So now that's actually a different axis, right? Than what do you enjoy about the game? But then this idea of like, why do you enjoy the game? And what is it that draws you in to the game? Is it the flavor, the art, the lore, the world building, or is it, really elegant, beautiful mechanical design with a lot of interesting play space and cool design mechanics and, that sort of element of a game. So those ideas, I think, apply very, very well to Magic the Gathering as well. So since we're talking about design, I guess I can talk about. I mean, I tried to avoid it, but here's the whiteboard. So Zen, that is a Timmy. That's a classic Timmy, Zen. Timmys are there because they want to experience or feel something. And sometimes what they want to experience or feel is, companionship and hanging out, man. We're just here to have a good time. Yeah, fucking crack open a beer and have another one, right? Timmys are there to just enjoy the experience. People love Shadowrun for its setting and never its mechanics. That's fairly accurate. Most people do not speak very highly of Shadowrun's mechanics. That is definitely the case for sure. What were we going to? Oh, the whiteboard. Got to get it open. Did I accidentally hit RPG? Okay. So title this one here, Game Design Woes. Ooh, King Hodop. I just played the final session I plan to ever run. Wait, did you play or did you run? Ever in the DC20 West March. King Hodop. This is big if true. For those of you who don't know, King Hodop, you know, they joined. He came to our thing because of his love for DC20, and we covered DC20, and King Hodop was really excited and came in here. I'm curious what's going on. Look at that! I blame all of you for enlightening me to higher tastes. Oh. Now, King Hodop, let me just say, okay, well, number one, there is no right or wrong RPG. There's no good or bad RPG. I mean, you know, you like what you like. There's nothing wrong about that. But I will say this, F's in chat, and I know there's at least a couple of you here, F's in chat, if you joined the Knights of Last Call, or you were a part of the Knights of Last Call because of your deep and abiding obsession with Pathfinder 2, and now you no longer play Pathfinder 2. Like maybe at all. And the answer is there's probably going to be a number of people because a lot of people came here and were like, you know, like, I'm a diehard Pathfinder 2 fan. And you know, they basically barely play it evermore. This doesn't mean they hate the game, by the way. You know, I love that series, Level 2 Janitor. That is one of my absolute favorite series that we've ever done. I mean, I've been doing this show for 5 years, and I honestly think that is my favorite. It is way up there, just absolutely way up there. And I don't think it gets enough views, and I actually think it's really, really good. I only have one problem with it, which is that when we started that series, I didn't really quite fully understand what that series is yet. So there's a part of me that kind of wants to go back and do the first 2 videos of it, I think, better again. And I say that, by the way, because I believe, you know, everybody has strengths, right? That, you know, maybe other people don't have. But for me, I don't think there's a lot of people, and this is, again, I'm not trying to flex here, but there's not many people who have the sort of encyclopedic knowledge of all of these various game systems across 50 years of D&D history to sort of be able to piece together the puzzles as you sort of go across the eras. And so I think that is a unique view that I'm really able to provide, which I think is fine. But that's true. Our Fatal is not great, for sure. That being said, I would never cover Fatal. But if any channel were to ever cover Fatal, I mean, think about it. You guys talk about me be condescending and ripping into something. I mean, wouldn't that be kind of what we would be here for? That's fair. You love the game. You want to succeed, but you don't have that kind of energy or time. You know what, buddy? You just described Pathfinder 2 for me in a nutshell. I think the game is great. I think it's beautifully designed. I think there's a ton of great build options. Okay. In fact, if we're talking, you know, we were talking about, remember, we just described Timmy and Johnny and Spikes. Okay. My problem, I think, with Pathfinder 2 is I think it's a little bit too much towards the Johnny side. And one of the things about being a very Johnny is it's just, you know, there's a lot of build options, and it's got all these little complicated doodads and bits and bops, and it's really cool for being able to like give this like really, really, you know, fiddly expression of what you view your character to be. This is PF2 I'm talking about, by the way. I'm just not here. I'm just not here for it, you know, as much as I used to be. I kind of just want to have I kind of want to have a rock and roll and good time, man. You know, kick ass and take names and just enjoy the show. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Aaron switched their PF2 game to Daggerheart. That's crazy. Pumpkin, this is known, hates PF2 now. You guys don't even understand how big Pumpkin was in our PF2 ecosystem. For him to say this is still absolutely hilarious to me personally. So. Tactiquest does strategy better. It's strategery. And Daggerheart does narrative better. Fair enough. Ooh, you joined because of history class? That's sweet. That's awesome. Den wants to know if DC 20 still has 29 conditions. Oh, that's interesting. Fun suggestion for follow-up. Fids that pick an archetype and break down how various more obscure D&D likes handle that archetype. That'd be kind of interesting as well. Yeah. Only has 14.5. Yeah, Nimble's very cool. Again, I flipped through it. It's a very small book for sure. Right, exactly, Shade. I mean, that's definitely how I feel as well. Let's read the worst RPG ever for sure. You know, I got skills, Zen Bullet. I've got skills. No, I agree. I would never probably actually do that. Yeah, we might have to do it for patrons only. Gotcha. Fighters from 13th Age, fighters from Daggerheart, fighters from how does each game express the idea of a fighter? Yeah, that's some real deep meta shit there. Right, that's the weird energy force. I didn't actually get further into my metaphor for psych, but it's got this weird spike energy in it as well. I don't know that I would call it a Johnny Spike system, but I do think that you are right on the point. I think you're right on the money. No, King Hodop, that's big. That's huge for sure. I mean, that's fine. We evolve, we grow. I mean, think about it this way, King Hodop. When you were DC 20, you were just a young lad in high school, single, not a care in the world. Now look at you. You're a scholarly man, married, you're a mature individual. It's fucking awesome, Jake. We talk about the fantasy of a class. We talk about the Timmy experience, right? And I think the Guardian nails the Timmy-ness of that archetype better than anyone, right? I'm going to go out and agree with Full Metal Dragon here. I think the 4E Paladin is also fantastic at feeling like a tank and feeling like a Guardian. A lot of the defenders from 4th edition did a very good job of that. And again, I've said it before a million times on this. I've said it before on a million times on this stream, but I have yet to experience a moment. And I've been playing role-playing games for a very, very long time, but I've yet to experience a moment that was defining for me as the ultimate fighter tank moment as the first time we saw in play at level 7 Glortak, okay, the level 7 dwarf fighter, okay, Battle Rager subclass, use Come and Get It. And just watching that play out again, I imagine that Daggerheart's Guardian could probably come close to it. And what's really funny about that is it's died down a little bit. I think it's been out for a few months now. People are getting used to it. But I just remember seeing so many posts for people being like, I can't believe it. The Guardian, it's like he's unstoppable. And I'm like, it's literally the name of the ability. But we're so used to these hyperbolic names of abilities. Like an ability will be called like Invincible. And it's like, you take 2 less damage. It's like, that's that's not invincible. You know, like, that's not invincible. Give me invincible. Right? We see these things all the time. So I thought it was really funny. I don't know if they were being dramatic, if they were being dramatically ironic, but people kept referring to this as, yeah, exactly, Mr. Squid. Death Stomp deals 2d6 damage, right? We always see this stuff all the time. Head Stomp, maybe it's Head Stomp or something. But again, Divine Challenge was really awesome. Paladin, great class in 4th edition, great class. Yeah, I mean, I saw people talking above about how like PF2 is a Johnny game that's pretending it's a Spike game in disguise playing, but it's actually a Johnny game, right? That's kind of what it is. But so okay. We've been tangenting. I'm sure we'll tangent again. I make no apologies. It's late. So this is a problem that this is just an example of game design and the difficulties. And we're working on it. Things people have complaints. People have suggestions. We'll figure it out. I'm just saying no solution is really ever that easy. So this problem actually began with Gary Gygax, and we did a whole stream about his statement about, any good campaign in any reasonable milieu must have accurate tracking of time. And the reason we expressed that in that stream, but for those of people who don't realize what this was really about, the way that Gary Gygax, used to play D&D was that he was the GM, and sometimes he would have like another GM like that would help him out, but he was the GM, and he might have had a wide variety of PCs played by a variety of different players. And I believe Gary has said that at times he had as many as 3 dozen players in his campaign. And what he was talking about nowadays, people call this Western Marches. And I got to admit, it bothers me because Western Marches was simply the name of Ben Robbins' campaign, where he was basically saying, I just want to run 3rd edition D&D the way that Gary Gygax ran AD&D 1st edition, the way that Gary Gygax kind of presumed that people locally in their areas were running D&D, which is to say it was a drop-in style game where you might have, PCs 1, 2, and 3 show up on a Tuesday and they want to play D&D. That's who showed up that day. Maybe Gary got off of work early, or maybe Gary got fired again. And he's like, hey, fellas, yeah, sure, stop by at 7 p.m. I'll be chain smoking camels and we can play D&D. You guys can go into my dungeon. And the reason why Gary talked about important time tracking is that the idea was if PCs 1, 2, and 3 went into the dungeon, and let's say during the course of their campaign or that session, they spent 4 days in the campaign world. So we understand that those characters are now at day 4 of the campaign. Okay. But every other PC in the campaign is still back at day 1. So so let's say that was session number 1. Okay. Well, when session number 2 shows up, let's say it's PCs 4, 5, and 6. Well, they can't play with PCs 1, 2, or 3 because they're not there. PCs 1, 2, and 3 are in the future. So you can't go adventure with them. They're already in the dungeon. So PCs 4, 5, and 6, they go adventure, and let's say they adventure to day 6. So now those characters are temporally in a fugue state. Now, one of the things that Gary would do is that each real day in, like our Gregorian calendar day, would be a day in the campaign. So in other words, if one day passed in the real world, one day passed in the campaign as well. So we have PCs 1, 2, and 3, they're at the end of day 4. We have PCs 4, 5, and 6, they're at the end of day 6. But now a day has passed, 2 days has passed, 3 days has passed. This means that all the PCs in the campaign are at least at day 3. So PC 7 is now on day 3. Okay? Now, we move forward. PC 7 starts talking to some other PCs. He says, hey, I'm going to drop by on day 5. Okay? Now, remember, PC 7 wasn't in the dungeon or whatever like that. We just assumed they were, wasting their time around town or doing something, getting into trouble. But they're not really making any sort of useful elements. To be fair, this ties into the whole idea of what we're trying to do with various games and downtime or whatever. Okay. Now, here's the test for you, okay? Day 5 comes along, okay? And PC, now these are played by different players. PC 2, PC 7, and PC 5, and by that I mean the players, are all at Gary's house and they want to play D&D. Can they? The answer is no. Because PCs 2 and 7 are temporally available, but PC 5 is not. PC 5 is in the dungeon. And that means that if the player of PC 5 wants to play, they got to make fucking PC 8. Okay? So now, there we go. So now we have a new PC in the game. Just because, even though you already have a PC in this game, now you have 2 characters because you can't play PC 5. They're not available. So you had to go and make PC, you had to make PC 8. Okay? And now we move forward. Not an option, Daniel. Time only move forward at 1 day per real day. So, I mean, this is what, how Gary did and what Gary did and how Gary did it. Similarly, okay, this is back in the day when like stuff actually took a long time. Let's say that PC 3 decides, you know what, Derek, I want to go and I want to I want to work at the forge and I want to, make myself a suit of full plate armor. And he goes, yeah, sure, that'll take 100 days. Cool. Okay, PC 3 is now locked into day 100. Now, here's the deal. This is where it gets really crazy. Remember, these people are not part of the same adventuring party. Some of these players may not even really know each other. It's entirely possible that this campaign may have been playing for months or years, and not every player has played with every player. So now, you're right. Gary could say, hey, do you guys just want to advance the campaign clock to day 100? But chances are good everybody else is going to say, fuck no, I got stuff I want to do. I don't give a shit that PC 3 is out of the campaign till 100. They didn't have to do that. They chose to do that. They can roll up a new PC and they can play that until such time as their full plate is finished. Meanwhile, we're going to keep playing the game. Now, somebody said this sounds like a pain in the ass to track. Well, yes, but Gary has an entire section, okay, in the Dungeon Master's Guide, okay? Now, that covers this because and again, we're talking so much about it. Let me see if I can bring it up here, just because we're talking about it so much. Dungeon Orange Spine. Okay. There we go. All right. There we go. One of the things stressed in the original D&D game was the importance of recording game time with respect to each and every player character in a campaign. Now, by the way, when he's saying one of the things that is stressed the original game of D&D, we are talking about the original 1974 white box, which is now sometimes called OD&D, right? In AD&D, which is what this is, it is emphasized even more. capital letters, right? Full on caps lock. You cannot have a meaningful campaign if strict time records are not kept. Okay. So, and again, what follows is a series of paragraphs basically explaining, what I was just talking about here. You can see here, they have adventures lasting 50 days. 6, by the way, you got to love this old school systems, right? For the sake of example, let us assume that you begin your campaign on day 1 of the year 1000. There are 4 player characters who begin initially, and they have adventures which last a total of 50 days. 6 days of actual adventuring and 44 days of resting and other activities. At this point in time, 2 new players join the game. One of the original group decides to go seek the advice of an oracle, and the remaining 3 old boys decide that they will not go with the newcomers. So on day 51, player A goes off on a journey. B, C, and D are resting on their laurels. E and F enter the dungeon, yada, 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 right? And then we talk about how, 4 actual days later, and it is best to use 1 actual day equals 1 game day when no one is playing. So I didn't make this up. This is all the original way that the game was intended to be played. Anyways, so Ben Robbins was just trying to make a game that did that. And now people call that Western Marches. Anyways, if those people who remember when we played Northern Reaches, so this is, believe it or not, this is actually all relevant. When people who used to play Northern Reaches, when people used to play Northern Reaches Season 1, okay, Season 1 was very inspired by Gary Gygax. And in Northern Reaches Season 1, which was our mega game, when your character went on an adventure, your PC was locked out for 2, 4, or 6 days, depending on basically how complex and how far away the adventure was. That means you couldn't play your character. If you played your character in a very involved, lengthy dungeon run on Tuesday, you could not play your character again until Monday, the following Monday. And one of the reasons that people upgraded their Patreon is because at the hero level, which was our $25 level, you got 3 character slots. So that meant that when your primary character was locked out, you might go play your other backup characters because you wanted to keep playing, but you couldn't play your level 1. You couldn't play your main character because they were on lockout, because the idea was they were out adventuring and they weren't available to go adventure. Some people loved it. Some people hated it, yada, yada, yada. So that is actually originally how we used to run our games. In fact, there you go. Pumpkin says, I remember I had 3 PCs in NR Season 1. I needed them all to play when the others were on lockdown. So there you go. Full Metal Dragon says, being ADHD, this kind of game sounds awesome. Yeah, you know how those old people are like, oh, I wish I could play 2 or 3 or 4 different, PCs. There you go. This is the game. Yeah, Zen Bullet says, I love playing multiple characters in one game. Now, what's funny, not funny, but what is observant is as RPGs have moved away from their sort of traditional role-playing, traditional wargaming roots and have really become more about expressing this character and inhabiting this character and being this character, I have found that the disdain, not the lack of interest, I'm talking about the actual disdain for playing multiple characters has grown immensely. Nowadays, people really make this one-to-one connection with their player character, and they can't imagine a world where they would want to play anybody else. So, excuse me. I would be so down to have multiple characters ready for different situations and goals. Absolutely. Very cool approach. Sorry. The microtransactions intensify. Well, honestly, people asked us for it, and we said, okay, sure. And also, too, we were spending a lot of money, so we had to make money some way. So that was how we used to do things. But there was a problem, okay? The problem that we had, and this is kind of a classic problem in any of these games, okay? Which is, what do you do in order for our game to work? We have multiple GMs. So we're not like Gary Gygax. We're not like the West Marches, okay? Because, see, Gary had the advantage that when that player played again, they were going to be playing with Gary, right? So Gary knew that. Gary was the GM. There was only one source of the GM. There's only one source of the truth. Well, in our mega games, we have multiple GMs. So what ends up happening is we have a requirement that Gary never had to have, which is that at the end of the session, okay, your PC basically has to be assumed to make it back to town. And it's the only way that this can possibly work, because otherwise, your character is sort of stuck in limbo and you can't play that character again. You know, let's say we say, well, you ended the game, you ended the session in the dungeon. So the next time you play, you have to play with that GM. Well, okay, when there's only one GM and the GM is the entire campaign, that we understand that. That's the way that games work. If the GM calls out sick or if the GM's on vacation, usually there's no game. But in a mega game, we might have a dozen GMs or 20 GMs or 30 GMs. So the next time you play might be with an entirely different GM. So what does that mean? If the session ends, and let's say your character is in the middle of a dungeon or they're out in the middle of some trackless waste or swamp, that your character, you can't play your PC again until that GM happens to be available? Hell, maybe you have to wait until all of those players are also available again and that GM is available. That's not a mega game. At that point, you're just playing a completely different, you're just playing a campaign. So, oh, good night there, Thad. Appreciate you stopping by. So we understood that for purposes of our sanity, we had to have the characters, go back. Now, the other reason is, how did it work if a session ended while mid-dungeon and you missed the next session when the rest of that party leaves the dungeon? Great question, Copperblint. The way that it usually happened, and the way that Gary recommended running it, is that usually the other players would run your character as a henchman or NPC. I believe Gary went off as saying, like, the lamest excuse would be to assume that the party member is sort of in the background and is walking around but doesn't really do anything. And he basically said, I'm not running the player character. If somebody else wants to run them, they can. But for Gygax purposes, that was what, and that's what happened. So Full Metal Dragon is kind of spot on the point. You create a Hearthstone for everyone so they can teleport to the nearest inn. By the way, this is exactly what World of Warcraft did, an MMO, because at the end of a dungeon and the group breaks up, like, how do you get back to town? The group all broke up. People logged offline. How are you going to fight your way out? You can't. You click your Hearthstone, you go back to your town, and you're safe. Okay? The problem that this creates, no one likes to walk home, 100%. And in fact, well, it's kind of a tangent here, but one of the things that made like the original Final Fantasy I so famously difficult, there's a very famous dungeon called the Marsh Cave, and it's very difficult. The monsters are very nasty. They poison you a lot, and you have to get through, I think, 1, 2, 3, I want to say 4 or 5 levels of the dungeon. You have to make your way down 4 or 5 levels of the dungeon to get at the bottom a treasure chest where you get a crown from a treasure chest that you need to get. And then you got to make your way out. And let me tell you something. There's no save points in this dungeon. There are no save points in any dungeon in Final Fantasy I. You can only sleep in a tent. You can only save at an inn in town or a tent, which is an expensive item that you may not have. And a lot of times in this game, you will TPK not on the way down. You will TPK on the way out after you have, quote unquote, beat the dungeon. So there's a lot of reasons why the Marsh Cave is considered to be one of the most difficult things in the game. Ice Cave is similar. The first time you go through the Earth Cave and fight the vampire, similar. So anyways, there's a lot of instances of dungeons in this game where you have to walk in and walk out. So now, look, this is why I said game design is difficult. Now, I would like to think that people are reasonable and they're not scumbags and they're not cheaters. But The fact of the matter is this created a problem, because the problem that this created was, let's say that you're playing your PCs and your characters are headed, into the fire swamp. And it's really tough. It's nasty. You're fighting a lot of rodents of unusual size, lots of encounters. Your resources are being depleted. It's a grindy kind of experience, okay? And then you get to the center of the fire swamp and you find the old twisted oak tree, and below it is the bog witch. And you're a little down on hit points and you're a little down on resources and spells, but you enter into the hollows beneath the old tree and you fight the bog witch, and you're pretty beat up. When you leave, you beat the bog witch, you've been successful. But now with low or no hit points, your spells exhausted. Now you have to make your way back out of the fire swamp to get back to town before the end of the session. And you're running out of spells. You're low on hit points. And those rodents of unusual size, those flame traps in the swamp, right? They're going to take their toll. But then you look at the clock and you see that there's only 15 minutes left in the session. So you stall. And then when the session ends, the GM says, "Hey guys, I'm actually free. Do you guys want to keep going?" And you go, "Oh, actually, I told my partner I had a hard stop, that I'd be done at 9, and it's 9, and I got to go, guys. So, all right, guys, that was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Bog Witch, yeah, fucking rock and roll. Wow, that almost got us. Cool. All right, well, I'll see you guys next time." Whoop, and then you teleport back to the town and you get healed to full. So this creates a sort of weird tension in our mechanics, because the idea is that we are trying to apply this mounting tension. This is the whole idea of a resource ablative game. Now, PF2, thankfully, luckily, kind of doesn't matter much about this, because the idea is that you can kind of heal to full basically after 20, 30 minutes after every fight. But in an older structured game, this becomes problematic, because the idea is that you want to apply the pressure and make it so that players can't take advantage of the fact that they are basically going to be able to Hearthstone, essentially, back to town to safety and to a full heal up at the end of the session. Okay? Now, that brings us to Dragontide, which is the current game that we are beta testing. The idea of Dragontide is that there is a island on the eastern side of a vast sea, which is a vast archipelago filled with countless tiny islands. And your adventurers leave Stormhaven to go on an adventure. You take a boat trip to one of these islands, and then you have an island adventure. And then at the end of that island adventure, after your 3 or 4 or whatever hours of game time, the assumption is that your character makes the journey back to Stormhaven to play again. Now, Dragonbane, and to its extent, it tries to put some of this resource ablation pressure on the PCs. Hit points dwindle, your willpower points dwindle, you start accumulating conditions, you start accumulating severe injuries. So what we wanted to do was to avoid people feeling like you could go across the trackless wastes, delve deep into the dungeon, get stuck in a death trap, and then go, "Oh, cool, it's the end of the session," and whoop, zip back to town for free. So we created a incentive program where at the end of an adventure session, your character receives 3 downtime actions. Now, these are actions that you can take in town in order to do things like heal yourself, craft items, fish off the docks, all that stuff. And a GM there's a table. Let me see if I can bring it up. It doesn't matter. A GM, there's a table in our guide, which basically says they only get the full downtime actions if their characters are able to, in good order and safely, return to the boat by the end of the session, right? Basically, if they do if they walk out, if they go into the fire swamp and they fight the bog witch and they kill her, then if by the end of the session they've left the bog witch, they've made their way back out of the dungeon, across the swamp, to the boat, to the shore, and they, basically if they did it quote unquote for real, they get the full 3 downtime actions. If the players are, say, if the session ends and the players are stuck in a quicksand death trap, but we ran out of time, well, they are going to be teleported back to town and they will be in complete safety. But our book basically says maybe you should award them 0 downtime actions. Or if players aren't in any immediate danger, but they're nowhere near the boat, maybe you only give them 1 downtime action. It's a sort of a tax, a way to sort of say, hey, we want to encourage you to not cheat and not scam the game and take advantage of the fact that you're going to be able to auto teleport back to safety at the end of the session. So that made sense to me. Additionally, I was deriving this from the game that inspired this game, which of course was Blades in the Dark. And for all of those who've played Blades in the Dark, you know that the play pattern of Blades in the Dark goes free play, and that's you talking on the Discord, setting up, talking to your fellow players, talking to a GM. Hey, are you guys free Friday? Cool. We should go to your island. That would be awesome. Cool. Then we have the engagement roll. Okay. Just like in Blades in the Dark, except that's called our sea voyage phase. Then you have the score, which is the island adventure. And then you go to downtime. And in Blades in the Dark, every time you do a score, you get +2 downtime actions. Now, I made it +3 because I wanted to give players an extra incentive. I assumed that most of the time there would probably, or I should say a good chunk of the time, that players would not be able to completely 100% safely return. And I assumed that most of the time people would probably be getting, between 1, 2, and 3 downtime actions, on average, maybe getting close to 2 downtime actions. So it was like Blades in the Dark, and there was an extra incentive that if you could do it really, really cool, to do it. So that was the plan. Now, furthermore, why am I giving them downtime actions at all? Okay, so this is step 1 that you need to understand. Step 2, or thing 2 that you need to understand, is I wanted to avoid someone being locked out of the game. One of the things that's important for us, we're not World of Warcraft. We don't have 10,000 people on the server. If people could play, I want them to be able to play. Now, to be fair, there was originally a little bit of a mistake. Bob took over the notes. He published the game as best as he could from my scatterbrain notes. So there were a couple of things that, slipped through the cracks. But the original idea is that when you got back to town, I assumed, without any qualification, that every player was going to hit up the tavern. And that costs 1 downtime action. And what the tavern does is it heals your hit points, your willpower points, and your conditions to full. Okay, basically it's a long rest, it's a full heal up, whatever you want to call it. I just assumed that everybody's going to want to do that, right? Nobody wants to go out on a fresh adventure already down hit points and already down spell points and already, stacked with conditions. So I assumed that this was a no-brainer. Now, to be clear, when Bob originally published the rules for like the first week or something of the game, this was erroneously listed at 0. So, but additionally, while you are out adventuring, if your character is ever reduced to 0 hit points, your character rolls on a severe injury table and will acquire a severe injury. The way that you heal the severe injury is by going to the hospital in town, and that takes 2 downtime actions. So now be aware that every PC in Dragontide, gets a certain number of they start the week with a certain number of downtime actions, somewhere between 4 to 7, and some characters even get a bonus D4 or D6 if they have really high intelligence scores. So even every character starts with 4 or 5 or 6 of these downtime actions. You get bonus ones. The reason why you get bonus ones is because even if you wasted all of your downtime actions, you wasted them all fishing, okay? You wasted them all on fishing, okay? You have 0 downtime actions. What I didn't want to have happen is that a character on Monday goes fishing a bunch, uses up all their downtime actions. Now they go on an adventure. They come back, they're beat up, they're hurt. They really need to use the tavern. They really need to use the hospital. Oops, they don't have any downtime actions. They can't play their character anymore, effectively, virtually, functionally. And I wanted to avoid characters being locked out. So my thought process was, if characters get somewhere between 2 to 3 downtime actions every time they come back to town after successfully doing the smart thing and returning, that then they would always have an action to spend on the tavern. But this also means that if you played particularly well and you played very appropriately and you made it back safely and in under good circumstances, you got the full DTAs 3, and your character didn't get messed up and fucked up on the trip. You avoided being, having your arm broken or your eye gouged out, and you don't need to go to the hospital. Then your character would net positive DTAs, right? So let's say you did a really cool job. You get back to the boat, you get +3 DTAs. And then when you get back to town, you go to the tavern and you spend 1. And cool, you actually managed to be up a net of +2. And you know what? Good on you. I've encouraged you, right, to play well, I hope. And you did a good job protecting your character and not having to go to the hospital. Because if your character had to go to the hospital, that would be another -2 and you'd be at 0. But, your character would be healed, full up, ready to go. So while you wouldn't be able to go fishing anymore in town or go to the dock and trade for, supplies, you could at least go adventure again. But here's what happened. Based on feedback, this isn't every PC, but based on feedback, GMs have their island, okay? And, the ship lands on the island. And the characters basically do that. And they basically end up using their time on the island to, rather than go adventure, they use their time on the island to take rests and heal up while on the island, so that when the session ends, their character is at full HP, no injuries, and they are absolutely at the boat. And that means that they get +3 DTAs, and they get -0 DTAs because they don't have to heal, they don't have to go to the hospital, they don't have to do anything. And so now they're getting +3 DTAs. And so now the problem is, and then we had some people who adventured 2 or 3 times in 1 week. So they were getting this ×3 and getting, +9 downtime actions. That's a lot. And, I'm not, if you're a player in one of these games, I'm not mad at you. And if you're a GM frustrated by this, I'm not mad at you. I didn't see this. This is what I saw. This is why I said game design is a bitch. Because, oops, right? Like I thought I was solving one problem, but I accidentally created a new one, which is that now people are basically afraid to leave the island or leave the vicinity of the boat. And their number one priority on the island, which is, by the way, called the island adventure phase. Their number one priority is, now wait, I couldn't make this up. There's this is so many layers to it, people. So this is why we're doing this stream. Now, I'm not here to bitch. This is very eye-opening for me, and I'm extremely happy that people are doing this because it's teaching me a lot. Okay? This is a multi-layered problem, and I really want to discuss it. Okay? But here's the problem. And again, if you feel like I'm targeting you or talking about something that you specifically complain about, number one, rest assured, other people have complained about it too. You may have been vocal about it, but I'm not throwing this out. Okay, I'm not throwing you under the bus. Okay, I'm actually happy about it. I just want to be really, really clear about it. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not like shitting on anybody. Okay, so here's the problem. So these characters are going on the island. They're going to the island. They're basically, you could argue, you could basically say something like, effectively, they're sort of avoiding the monsters. They're not going into the dungeons, right? They're kind of just making a safe trip. And then as soon as the session's almost halfway over, they're making their way back to the boat because they want to get those full DTAs. Okay. Now they get all these DTAs. Great. But what do you do with them? Okay. What do you do with them? Now, in our game, you can spend downtime actions to do a variety of things. Now, one of the things that you can do with our downtime actions is, if you're a particularly skilled artisan, okay, is you can go to the guild hall. Okay? And at the guild hall, all right, at the guild hall, you can engage in a session where you're going to use your skill in order to basically make money. You're going to use you're basically going to be hired out to work on building a plan. Okay. And I'm not going to get like too much into it, but the net effect of this is that if you're successful, you get 6 wealth. Okay. Now there's ways that you can modify this. Okay. For example, if a character chooses to spend an influence, which is one of our resources, okay, it actually makes the check harder because this is an elite commission. So you're spending your influence to get a commission from somebody who really wants a nice piece. That's going to make the check harder, so it gains a bane. But if you succeed at the check, you get 6 additional wealth. It doubles how much wealth you get, okay? So it's kind of a risky gamble, but if you're really good and you're, really good at your craft and you have a lot of other advantages, you might be able to pull it off. And in fact, we had a character, Edril, who just did that yesterday. Okay. So Edril, okay, walked to the guild hall to work on his leather working. Now, this check starts with 2 banes because it's just different. All guild hall checks start with 2 banes. He has a superior setup because he bought a workbench. He spends one of the knowledge resources to get the knowledge of the craft bonus, giving him a boon. He has tools of the trade, giving him another boon. He acquires an elite commission, spending an influence, but getting 1 bane. He works overtime, spending an additional downtime action, giving him an additional boon. And he used a monster part, widow web glands, which is something that you can use for leather working, that applies better results if you are successful. So he got 3 banes, 3 boons. So he made a flat roll. He succeeded. He got 6 wealth base plus 6 wealth from the elite commission, and for expending an uncommon material, an additional 4 wealth. So he made 16 wealth. Pretty cool. Now, what's the problem with this? This is a way of explaining it. Okay. The problem is this is a good chunk of money. Now, to be clear, Edril spent a lot of downtime actions. He also had to acquire these widow web glands. You don't just find those growing on trees. He also had to take actions to acquire the influence that he spent, the knowledge that he spent, right? These are other things that he had to do. So a lot went into this, setting up this action. But 16 wealth was a lot. And a complaint that was sort of registered was, that's more money than we get while we're adventuring. Okay, fair. And I thought you said that adventuring was supposed to be more profitable because it's more dangerous. And they are correct. The problem is when they go adventure, they're not adventuring. They're just walking around in a circle. So they're not finding any treasure because they're not doing anything that's going to find them treasure. Instead, they're just doing this so that they can maximize their downtime actions. So this raises the question, okay, well then why don't they use, so in a way, the town game became the real game. This is, by the way, the final result of this is so fucking obvious. It's stunning. Okay. So let's rewind ourselves here. The people who are going adventuring aren't really going adventuring. So when they get back, they get a bunch of downtime actions. But then they're mad or frustrated because they don't have any gold because they didn't actually really go adventuring. But then you might argue, okay, but they have all these extra downtime actions, right? Right? Can't they just go use these downtime actions to go into town and to make money? Sure. Maybe they can't use the guild hall because it's, it's not something that they're good at. But they might be able to go to the dockside market. Okay. And the dockside market lets you exchange supply for wealth. Okay. So you can trade in supply that you've acquired and you make a bartering check and then you can trade supply for wealth. Basically, you're selling your stuff into a market, right? They could do that, right? Then they would make a lot of money. Because if you have a lot of downtime actions, you could spend those downtime actions to say, go fish, which grants you supply. Or you could go to the lumber yard and you could get supply. Okay? So they should have a ton of supply. True, obvious that we just put that up today, but they could have used their downtime actions to acquire a bunch of supply or a bunch of other resources. And that would have been able to give them money. Or they could have spent it doing some of the other actions like fishing that can generate you rare catches. Now wait, here's where it comes in. Here's the thing. So wait a second. So these people are adventuring and they feel motivated, right? And I always say this before, what gets rewarded gets repeated, right? So they're going on the adventure, but they're really only going on the adventure so that they can get downtime actions. In fact, one GM, I don't recall who it was, basically said, like, I feel like people are coming to my island just to waste time so that they can get more downtime actions. So what are they doing? Of course. Of course. What they are doing is using all of their downtime actions to go to this building. This building is the Storm Hall, the Weapon Skill Training Hall. This is an extremely inefficient action space that allows you to spend many, many, many downtime actions to eventually make one of your weapon skills go up by 1. And if you look at the personal projects tab, and again, I'm not B, you got it. V, you said I knew it. It's the training problem from Blades. The reason this building exists is because it's in Blades in the Dark. If you go to the personal projects page, what do you see? Well, Darth Gorlock, our boy Darth, is beginning to craft a short bow. That's pretty sweet. Everybody else is training up their weapon skills. So it is the case that, almost everybody is just they're using all their downtime actions to, very, very slowly tick up this progress track to train their weapon skills. And so the answer is numbers go burr. And what's funny is I put this into the game for one reason. Well, two reasons. Number one, it was in Blades in the Dark. And as B said, the quote unquote training problem. Now, I never had this problem in Blades in the Dark. My players wanted to use their downtime actions to do personal projects. That was their favorite thing to do personal projects, occasionally indulge their vice, but they loved starting their own clocks and doing their own projects. They loved it. But a lot of other people would use the train action a lot in Blades in the Dark. But the other reason is because when I pitched this game, okay, in fact, one of our council members, someone who I really, really respect, okay, Goblins and Android, he doesn't really like or care about the town game. He doesn't like it in Northern Reaches. He doesn't like the venue system in Northern Reaches. He doesn't want to deal with all this town rigmarole, bric-a-brac, right? Like, we have all these different, buildings that you can go to, and they acquire these different meta resources like wealth and influence and knowledge. Some people I knew just wanted to play Dragontide so that they could play Dragonbane. And I knew that those characters were probably going to have low intelligences and low charismas. Okay. And the reason that they would have low intelligences and low charisma is because I fundamentally believe that those are basically dump stats in Dragonbane. And in our game, the number of base downtime actions that you get every week on Monday, so just recently, like 2 hours ago, is based off of your charisma and intelligence. I did this so that the character who has a really high charisma and a really high intelligence, the sort of little finger characters. Okay, you need int for bushcraft. Int is a lesser of a dump stat, Cal, and that's why int is the bonus and charisma is the base. So you aren't wrong, Cal, but that is why charisma is the base and bush. But even then, well, we could get a whole separate thing into bushcraft, but that's about the island design. That's another flawed assumption that I made. We can get to that maybe when we're done with this, if you guys are still enjoying this conversation. Anyways, my idea was that these characters who were basically like, fuck town. I don't want to deal with town. I don't care about town. I just want to play Dragonbane, man. I want to go on adventures. I want to go into cool dungeons and ruins, and I want to fight monsters and all this other stuff. That those characters would probably have a fairly low charisma, maybe a reasonable intelligence, and they were going to have somewhere between 3 to 6 downtime actions per week. Not a ton, not a lot, a handful. And I assumed that those characters would be spending their downtime actions getting fucked up. But I knew that if they literally wasted them, believe it or not, even though they said fuck the town, I knew that they would then go, well, that's no fair. What about my downtime actions? What can I do with my downtime actions? And I was like, okay, all you really care about is playing the game. Fine. I will give you a very inefficient way that you can very slowly level up your skill. And by the way it works is, let's say that your skill is 15. If you want to get your skill to 16, you need to fill in a 16 clock, 16 checkboxes. Every time you spend a downtime action, you will get either 1 to 2 checks. So if you fail, you get 1 check. If you succeed, you get 2 checks. So you can see that on average, you're probably going to get somewhere between 1 and 2, 1.7 or something like that, or 1.5 or something. So it's going to take you something like, I don't know, 8 or 9 downtime actions in order to get your skill from a whopping 16 or 15 to a 16. And then the track resets. And if you wanted to get to 17, you got to do it 17 times. I did this because I assumed these characters would have so few downtime actions, this would take a very long time, and it was just a way to give them something that way they could just dump their downtime actions into something they actually care about, like their sword skills or their bow skill, that otherwise would be progressing very slowly. Additionally, I respect that some people do want, their skills to go up during the game, and unlike a normal campaign, Dragonbane, could last maybe, I don't know, months or years. Our Dragontide game is based off of these, yearly annual seasons. You might only have 9 real life months to play the game. And I wanted people to be able to get to 18s, which is the highest you can get a skill, over the course of 9 months. And it can be very frustrating when you play Dragonbane because at the end of every session that you adventure in Dragonbane, let's say your skill is 17, okay? At the end of the session, you can use one of your experience points to mark your skill for a skill advancement roll. The way a skill advancement roll is you have to roll over your skill. So on an 18, 19, or 20, your skill would go up to 18, and that's the max that your skill can be. That means you have a 15% chance every session, and that's if you spend an experience point in that skill. You might only have 3 or 4 experience points, so you're giving up something. You could play for weeks. You could maybe even play for months and never actually get the 18, 19, or 20 and get the level up. So I knew that would be frustrated, and because our season only lasts maybe 8 to 9 months, I wanted in a normal game, we usually start around March and we usually end around Thanksgiving for Northern Reaches. I knew that I wanted to give people a chance to maybe have another ulterior way to sort of gradually, slowly, maybe get those little bumps. Okay. And so again, I designed what I thought was an extremely inefficient process. The problem is that because these characters aren't going on adventures, they're going to the island and they're going 3 times a week, but they're not actually adventuring. So they're picking up 9 downtime actions. Now, they're not getting any treasure or gold because they're not really adventuring, but they are getting a lot of downtime actions. But they're not using their downtime actions to engage with the town in order to earn money. Instead, they're using their downtime actions, but now they had 5 base, which isn't a lot. But then they went and adventured 3 times and spent no downtime actions healing because they didn't get hurt at all. So now they have 14 fucking downtime actions, which is a lot. And so now they're just sitting there spamming the weapon chat. And so now their skills are going up, but they're not adventuring, which is frustrating the GM. But the players are also frustrated because they don't have any money because they're going on these adventures to not adventure, but that way they can get downtime actions so that they can raise their skills, which they don't actually use. It's a masterpiece in just complete fuckitude, or being completely fucked up. Now, I'm not saying any of these problems are intractable. This is a case of optimizing the fun of the game. And no one has specifically said this to me, but basically what was said to me is something along the lines of, but Derek, I can't help myself. That option is there. I have to spam it, basically. Derek, that's exactly right. You gave me an option. I can't help myself. But here's what's funny about that statement is it's patently untrue because they are complaining that they have no money and that they need better gear and equipment. So the optimal thing would actually be to go use their downtime actions to get the resource that they are missing. But they can't help themselves because the numbers go burr, I guess. I don't fully admit to understanding the entire nature of the problem and why some people do. Now, to be fair, there might be people out there who are completely happy spamming their weapon skill and getting their poos up. But this is sort of the crux. That you can see how it's a multiple layered, interwoven system. That that we arrive at this problem. And here's the gross part, right? I thought that I literally I almost felt bad putting this action in the game because I was like, you are just throwing your actions into a black hole. I mean, yes, eventually, it's not bad. It's not that bad if your skill is really low. And you know what? I actually really like this. Let's say your character has a really bad bow skill. Your bow skill is 6, right? That's going to take you a long time to get that bow skill up, right? When you have a 6 bow skill, it means you need to roll a 6 or lower, right? So you have a 30% chance of hitting with your bow. Chances are good you're not going to use your bow, right? So this is cool because it actually allows you to, in a reasonable amount of time, work your bow up from a 6 to a 7 to an 8. Maybe you put a point into it while you're adventuring and, give it 9 and 10. And eventually you get your bow up to a 10 or 11 or 12. And now you can actually use your bow because you can hit with it. That's cool. I'm okay with that. But that's not what people are doing. People are maxing out their skills that they use all the time for the adventures that they go on that they don't actually try to engage with anything, right? So it's a weird problem because I felt like this is actually a very inefficient and bad track. In fact, again, if anything, I felt like this was better to be used on your skills that sucked. And you were like, oh, it'd be cool if I could use knives, or it would be cool if I could use hammers. Let me up my hammers skills, right? Because there's a lot of different weapon skills in Dragonbane. I'm bringing up the PDF here. You're not going to be good at all of these. So, you might be like, oh, it'd be cool to be good with hammers, Yeah, right. Are they waiting until their build comes online? I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, so like maybe your character's bow skill or their staff skill or their sling skill is shit. And you're like, cool, I want to, put some of my DTAs. Because again, the idea being that I don't care about town. Why would I spend it? But if I didn't give them a release valve, I think people would be like, well, what can I do with my downtime actions? If I was like, well, you got to go visit the guild hall and go to the dockside market. And they're like, yeah, I'm not doing any of that shit. And I'm like, okay, well then you waste your actions. People would be like, well, that sucks. I should be able to use them for something. So I gave them this as sort of a release valve. And sure enough, that's what people are using it for. But, there it is. So there's a series of interconnected problems. Now, what's really funny, separately, one of the complaints, again, I'm not targeting anybody in specifically. One of the comments that somebody made, actually, I think I heard it from 2 people, was they said, the problem is that you have all of these resources that you can go and acquire. Like, for example, if you go to the lumberyard. Lumberyard is a pretty basic building. When you go to the lumberyard, right, you make a crafting or carpentry roll. And then if you fail, you get 1 supply. If you succeed, you get 2 supply. Okay. Basically, you're chopping wood. You note if you do roll a demon, a critical failure, you get nothing, and you have to roll on the severe injury table. Yes, you can kill yourself at the lumberyard, but hey, saws are dangerous. And somebody basically made the point of, why would I use these actions? The resources don't do anything. But the reason why that's kind of messed up is because from the very first day of the game, every week has a different challenge event. Okay. This was called the housing shortage. Word of riches in the Isles has spread far and wide. Bands of eager adventurers arrive daily seeking fortune, but Stormhaven has nowhere to house them. Taverns overflow, makeshift camps spring up along the docks, and tensions mount between locals and newcomers. They had 3 weeks, which ended yesterday, to get 20 units of progress in order to beat this event. In order to make a tick of progress, you either had to deliver a bundle of 2 supply and 1 wealth, or a bundle of 1 influence. Either way, you gained 1 point of progress. And in order to beat it, you needed 20 progress. Now, if you failed this event, then for the entire next season, which would be weeks 4, 5, and 6 of the campaign, all town actions cost an additional supply and an additional downtime action for every single adventure. And so here's the thing. This thing, it got it got finished. I mean, this is just a small snippet of the people who worked on it, right? You can see Calderiac delivered 3 bundles. Omniscitoad delivered a bundle. Helenthius delivered 2 bundles. Edril was talking about setting up some wealth. Look at this. Orcus Sun. Rena had a good time fishing to feed / house the homeless, delivering 5 bundles, right? So a bunch of players got together and they solved this town crisis using the resources. So it's weird to me that people would say, well, these resources had no point. And what I think they mean is it didn't like buff their character, but like the whole point of the resources in part is so that you can, help the town overcome its challenges. And so I just thought, again, it's just really interesting from a game design perspective, how some people view and interact with these elements differently. And again, I didn't hear this from any one person. I heard this, from a handful of people. Not most people really thought the game is the bee's knees. Okay, true, but obvious. But like that clock, existed from day one. That tick down that was there from the first week onward. We do have a beach action. So the beach action is, it takes 3 downtime actions, but then you are well rested and you get +2 downtime actions for the next week. So if you really have nothing that you can spend your actions on, you can lose 1 in the translation, but you can kind of punt them to punt some of the actions to the next week. Well, Hides' eyes, you might be right about that, except that, because not every event can be about carrots and sticks. The famine event, which the town worked together to not only beat, okay, the town critically succeeded at the famine event. Not only is disaster averted, but the town found itself flush with resources. A rare season of abundance. Bellies are full, spirits are high, and work flourishes. And now, for the next 3 weeks of the game, weeks 4, 5, and 6, the entire town is rocking the Season of Plenty boon, and every player character in the entire campaign gets an extra downtime action every week because they got a critical success on the famine event. So there was a reward. Now, in addition to all of this, it is true that we give these, when you turn in these things, you get this prestige award. And the only thing prestige award is saying like, yeah, you're a cool guy, or you're a cool girl, or you're a cool person. You help the town out, you get prestige points. What can I spend prestige points on? What weapon skill does prestige points help me with? It doesn't. It's literally a number that just shows like how cool of a town, how cool of a townsperson you are. How much do people like you? How much are your sort of civic pride, as somebody said. So anyways, it's just a very interesting concept to me. And so anyways, point is, obviously, we could probably have, but again, it would be a fluffy bullshit thing, Jake, right? The title wouldn't give you, plus 13 banes or whatever, plus 13 boons or something like that. It would be just totally a fluffy bullshit thing. So anyways, I created this system and it is not working, and to the point where multiple GMs have expressed to me that it doesn't really feel like the players are interested in adventuring. Now, let's take a side tangent as to why that occurred. Okay, this is a big problem, but let me introduce you to a very subtle problem. And this again is why I said game designer's hard. I'm bad at it. Don't make assumptions. They only make an ass. Actually, they don't even make an ass out of you and me. They just make an ass out of me. I made this game, and again, brief tangent, okay? Because my birthday is in a few days. I'll be 43. My life goal was at the age of 42, which I have 2 days left, so not going to happen. I was going to retire. I was going to sell most of my worldly belongings, except for like a condo, obviously, which would, I'd probably keep well, at the time I thought I would have a house, but, I would keep a modest condo or downsize my house, get a small condo, sell most of my worldly possessions. I was going to buy a sailboat. And I was going to spend about January through end of September sailing in the Caribbean. Okay? End of September, because that's the end of hurricane season, roughly. Then, at the end of September, maybe around my birthday, I would dock my boat for the winter somewhere in Florida. I would then fly back home, see my friends and family, stay at my house that I own for October, November, December, January, through the holidays, get to see everybody, avoid Cleveland in the summertime, be here for the beautiful fall, which is just my favorite season, and get to see some snow. But then after Christmas and after New Year's, when, the snow gets played out and then we get into the shitty days of January, February, March, that is when I would leave, go back to Florida, hop on my boat, and sail the Caribbean. So that was my life goal. That did not work out. Okay. That was always my goal. So number one, I really like boats. I really like sailing. And that was my life goal. Now, separately, I knew that people were very interested, in sailing and the Pirates of the Caribbean and, all that stuff. So my idea, right, was to, take this idea of, all these islands in the Caribbean nation, all these island nation, right? The Virgin Islands, this is kind of small, the Virgin Islands, St. Kitts, Antigua, Guadalupe, Dominica, Martinique, St. Lucia, Barbados, the Bahamas, Bermuda, right? You've heard of all these names before, right? And, this was kind of my inspiration for what I imagined this sort of archipelago would look like, in that sense. Kind of conversely and differently, there's also like the Aegean Sea, right, which is obviously near Greece, where you have all these islands that are, doing their stuff there, right? So that was my idea. Now, can somebody? There might be people in chat who know what happened. What happened? What was the problem? This, by the way, does tie into the problem that we were talking about earlier. Believe it or not, it does tie into the problem of this process. Anybody? Bueller? All right. I'll tell you. The problem is that I believe. No. I'm not talking about my retirement problem. I'm talking about this was my vision in my mind, and I assumed everybody else's mind, about what the game would be. No, not my personal retirement plan. I'm talking about the game, right? I'm talking about the game of Dragontide. And it actually links back to wherever the fuck we put it. It actually links back to this problem where the players are getting off the island, walking around, and then getting back to their boat. Anybody? No? Okay. Here's the problem. In Dragonbane, you have no clue? All right. All right. This is again, game design is hard, and I will never do it. All right, here we go. Here we go. This is the travel rules for Dragonbane. Journey proceeds in shifts. A shift is a 6-hour period of time. There are 4 shifts in the day: morning, day, evening, and night. As a rule, the players can hike roughly 15 kilometers per shift on foot. So 15 kilometers every 6 hours. They normally can walk or ride for 2 shifts per day, including a few short breaks. All right, so you can march for about 12 hours a day, and you move about 15 kilometers a shift, so that's about 30 kilometers, right? So if you could think about a hex, right? If we think about a hex, right? That hex would be about 15 kilometers, okay? Do you know how big these islands are? Like, Guadalupe would be like 2 hexes. Dominica would be like 1 hex. My players, my PCs, or my GMs, did not make Montserrat and Guadalupe and Dominica. Their islands are like the Dominican, like Hispaniola, okay? Their islands are like Cuba, okay? They basically made Australia, not quite Australia, okay? They made massive islands. I didn't even understand what was happening because I was like, I don't even understand this play pattern. What do you mean? And then I go, how long were your people on the island? And Bob or Edgeroll or somebody was like, oh, they were on the island for a week. And I said, they were on the island for a week? Because I was like, how are people resting so much on your islands? Aren't they only there for a few hours? And they go, well, and Bob was like, well, it takes about a 3 or 4 day march to get to the center of my island. And I was like, wait a second. So your island is like 400 or 500 kilometers wide? And he goes, yeah, about that. And I go, oh my. These islands are massive. Okay? They're absolutely massive, which is why people don't want to go explore them and stay close to the boat. I was like, how do they not get back to the boat? The boat is probably never more than 6 hours away, maybe. You know, maybe it's 12 hours, maybe it's a full day's march. But that would be, you know, like if your boat landed, you know, on this side of Guadalupe and you had to make it, or sorry, if your boat landed on, you know, if your boat landed on this side of Martinique and you made your way all the way down here, and then you had your adventure, and then you had to make your way all the way back. Maybe that's 12 hours of dedicated hiking, you know, through mountainous terrain or something like that. But no. Their islands are like 30 hexes by 20 hexes. Okay. And so, yeah, Timon, they are trying to cut through Cuba. That's exactly right. I mean, like, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. And again, game design is hard. And I made an assumption, and I talked about before, like, this is what fucks you. And again, I was imagining little islands like the Turks and the Caicos, you know, these tiny little, you know, islets. Mark Lore says, for reference, Dominica, which we had over here, is 48 kilometers north to south. So roughly, you know, a little, basically 3 hexes, right? And you could definitely see that it's not that wide. So it would be 1, 2, 3 hexes. Perfect. That is exactly what I was envisioning. And so I was like, and part of the problem that we're getting with the healing element is that because the way that Dragonbane works, when you have something like a week on the island, every day you get 4 shift rests. 4 stretch rests. That's what it's called. Basically, you get every 6 hours, you get a stretch rest. Well, that heals D6 HP. So players aren't actually needing to rest in order to rest. They're on the islands for so long, they actually are healing up to full. But more importantly than that, the island is like this big. Their ship is landing here, and they are afraid to go out here because this is a 2-week journey. And they're like, we'll never make it back to the boat in time. And I'm like, yeah, of course you're not. And so the GM put the adventure site here. So the players are never going to get to it because they don't want to go that far into like the middle of, Java or Indonesia, right? Some massive 100,000 square kilometer plus island. Of course not. But the island on this scale was supposed to be that big, And it's like, oh, you landed here? Cool. In one day, you could probably walk around the entire island. So that causes this, again, it's a series of cascading failures on my behalf. And you know what? Props to my players. Props to my GMs who are playing this game. I love you all because, again, number one, you guys are awesome. You're making a great game. Number two, you're having a go of it. You're having fun. You're playing. You're having a great time, which I love. But most importantly, the survey is not complete yet. But, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Dragontide to a fellow community member or gamer? And by and large, right, we are at, we are probably at 8.2 or something like that, 8.3. So, obviously we have a couple of people who are not, maybe not digging it, and it's not for them, and they're not having a great time. That's fine. You can't make everybody happy, but overall, people are having a good time, which is fantastic, which is great. But, so again, respect to my players and my GMs because they are having a lot of fun and they are enjoying the game and they're having some really good positive feedback, even though there are some fundamental whoopsies that are going on in the game. One of which is the island. Yeah. So, anyways, just have your players casually sail from Spain to Canada as part of the adventure. Yes, that is possibly. High size. I've torn my hair out trying to decide hex map scale and size for a normal campaign. I want players to engage with overland travel, but not have huge empty spaces between adventures. Yeah, it's a problem. I'll give you another example if you guys will indulge me. I think you will because you guys are awesome like that. 1 second, I gotta load up the forge. Wait. Derek. Highest die roll is a D20. What do you mean invalid username? How is that my invalid username? Okay. So, what do I need to do here? There we go. Perfect. Okay. I don't know if this has to update or load or whatever. So for those of you who aren't aware of it, this is the Forbidden Lands, the official Forbidden Lands campaign map. This is the Raven Lands, right? This is their entire, the entirety of their campaign, right? And so this is the entire map of the Forbidden Lands. Okay, you can see it's a hex map. The area that is colored in is the area that was explored in our year-long campaign. Okay, everything in black and white was never explored by the players. I don't know why that is the color it is, but there we go. Now, here's the crazy thing. Okay, in Forbidden Lands, a person on foot can march 2 hexes per quarter day. So you could march 4 hexes per day because you can march for 2 quarter days. So you can march for half the day. That's a normal march, not a forced march, not a crazy march, not a horse, just march, walk. So in one day, you could travel 4 hexes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, guess what? This map is only about 40 hexes north to south. So that means that in 10 days, you can walk from the top of this map to the bottom of this map. Actually, maybe a little bit less, like 9 days or something. I mathed it out. So this map seems giant, doesn't it? Doesn't this map seem absolutely massive? I mean, we played for an entire year, and basically 90% of what we played in basically was right inside of this area here, between this town, Freygrove, Halvard's Ferry, the Hollows, Weatherstone, right? The Temple of the Serpent. Almost everything that we did was just really within this area. But guess what? This area, this entire map of this entire area is like literally, again, I mathed it out. It's like the size of like, not even Ohio. It's like the size of like the northeastern part of Ohio, you know? It's just terrain. Turn off the terrain. There we go. Yeah, so it's like, again, it's really, really small. It's again, it's probably, you know, I don't know, 200 kilometers or something like that. It's just, it's not a big area. So anyways, the scale seems off for some of those mountains. I agree. Anyways, point is that, you know, even this big Forbidden Lands, Ravenlands is, relatively speaking, a pretty small area. So when you ask about like how big should it be, I mean, I would argue that even this is probably more than large. I could run several campaigns in just this one map. I could probably run, you know, a campaign in this for years, and the whole map might not get filled in. So, yeah, it's a hell of a thing. I mean, that's Hides' Eyes. I mean, Hides' Eyes says, one thing I've decided about hex map play is it's best to forget about reality and focus entirely on what's good for the game. Generally speaking, that has become my mantra for most things related to TTRPG. But hey, Jorlson, nice to see you stop by. Yeah, Cal says, I made a 2x8 island and I thought it was too big. Yeah, again, I was literally, especially, by the way, these are the Zone 0 islands for the, these are the Zone 0 islands for the beta. I was literally thinking that they would be like a two, you know, like a three hex flower, you know, just like some little tiny thing, with almost nothing to do about it. There you go. Yeah. I mean, so again, it's awesome that people are having a good time. I'm sorry that not everybody is having, you know, an incredible time, which is fine. And again, it is a beta. It's true. We launched it as a beta. It's season 0. We're only running it for 12 weeks, right? Not for, you know, 36 or something like that, which I think is probably pretty standard normally. We run for 36 or 42 or something like that. The thing is, I cannot stress to you how large, like, even if you had something that was 10 by 10 kilometers, 100 square kilometers is an absurdly large space. It really is. So, you know, anything, you know, if you have 400 square kilometers, it is a massive amount of space. But, you know, anyways, so long story short, not everybody was as up to date or aware as I was about the size of how big islands actually are. They made gigantic islands. When people landed on them, they felt like to venture into those islands would be for sure not to be able to get back to the boat. And they needed to get back to the boat so that they could get the downtime action, so that they could train their skills, so that they could go adventure. But when they went and adventure, they didn't adventure. They steered near the boat because it was too big of an island. But that led them then to work on their weapon skills instead of working on getting resources, which meant they had no money. So then they didn't have any money, which complained because then they couldn't go adventure because they didn't have good gear. So then when they went and adventured, they'd instead have to go to the cycle continues. So, yeah. I wonder that as well, B. If the islands were appropriately sized, would these bigger problems diminish? Again, it's all Pumpkin got it exactly right. It's a massive compounded issue, just sort of, overlapping, on top of one another. So yeah, I don't know. And it's even one of those things again, like, I was at cons and then I went from a con to a con and I went from con to Vegas. So, shout out to Bob because, he basically put all of this together from half scribbled notes from over a year ago. And he launched the game. And I thought we were going to launch with 20. We launched with 60. I gave him a nice fat bonus because I said, he did such a great job. But, it turns out that even though I had thought these things through, I still did not fully guess. I did not fully understand the extent of the problem. No, I don't think it's a them problem. It's what I was trying to say is that game design, going back to that very beginning thing with Richard Garfield, where, someone's like, oh, I love the card that lets me auto win. And he's like, what the fuck card is that? It is a very fraught and dangerous process because you have no idea how people are going to take your intent, and you have no idea what their motivation is and how they are going to misuse, abuse, So, and again, I don't think anyone is doing anything wrong, but I do think there's a certain subset of people who are, sort of optimizing their fun out of their own game, So, yeah, that's a good way to put it, too. Derek and Bob are making one game, which is like the mega game, and then GMs are making their own islands, which is game design to some extent. And I should note here, and we do have some Northern Reaches veterans in the chat, very famously in Season 2 of Northern Reaches, Smith and I tried to get very, very hands-on. We tried to get very, very, very micromanaging with the way that GMs built their campaigns and their games. And people did not like it. They did not appreciate it. So one of the things that I decided to do for Dragotide was to basically say, look, you can have your own island, and whatever you put on your island goes, and that way I don't have to I could be hands off, and I don't have to worry if you make something that's crazy and weird. It doesn't have to like disrupt or ruin the whole game. And it's sort of an inherently bounded issue. And I thought that was a great compromise. But again, so I didn't put a lot of, restraints around what people could or couldn't do. I didn't want to get into that micromanaging lifestyle, which I find that a lot of GMs are very turned off by. Now, Pumpkin says, I actually like the GM rules from Season 2. I know it was not well loved, though. And it was not. And yes, the beta is for ironing out these issues. And I am very appreciative that people are having fun and that they are enjoying it, even though it is a beta. But, it is a beta. And again, I cannot reiterate this enough. People are playing a lot of Dragonbane. They're engaging with these town mechanics, and they're having a lot of fun doing that and playing the mini game. And again, if you love a good, Uwe Rosenberg or Rainer Knizia worker placement game, you're going to love the Stormhaven town game. Let me tell you. And you get all this for $10 a month, but you could also play in we have people who are playing in Northern Reaches and in Dragotide. And you also, of course, get all the access to benefits of our Patreon as well, which includes all of our exclusive chat channels, our other community games. They may not be mega games, but there are other games that are being run by people for a variety of different game systems. We have Daggerheart games going on and Pathfinder 2 games going on and all this other stuff. So anyways, in fact, if I don't want to shit on myself too much, I will say that for the people who are engaging with the town, they are really enjoying it. So at least that part seems to be singing. Now, it did take us longer than I expected because I was traveling so much and to get all the buildings up. It is a beta. We're trying to figure out how to get these things are and get them balanced and, figured out. But we do have a list of these are, by the way, the starting buildings. If you look, you can see that they have this tag here. It says starting building, because the idea is that the players and the community will upgrade these buildings build new buildings. For example, Edril is in the process of building a new building. Okay, this is in our town projects thing. So this is sort of player initiated, which is, they're building the Hunter's Lodge, Yeah, Jorlson. In fact, one of the reasons we chose Dragonbane is because Dragonbane is a level-less game. So there's no like XP leveling up, gaining more hit points as you go on. So someone could join tomorrow and their character would be, just as viable basically as a character that started a few weeks ago. So one of the reasons we actually originally even talked about using this game for a mega game is because it was kind of frustrating with the level-based games and trying to make sure everybody was the same level. And then we were like, well, we could just make everybody auto level up. And while that has worked, it does lose some of the luster and some of the allure of that as well. Pearl diving nonstop this week. Hopefully I get 9 DTAs. Hope you don't drown. So yeah, you could still absolutely play. I'm in the Discord and I just watched and was watching all the newcomers just for Dragontide. That's fantastic. Now, unfortunately, Pumpkin says, I love worker placement, especially when you're competing for limited space or resources, which is a classic Uwe Rosenberg game like Agricola or Caverna or Feast of Odin or Aura at Labora or Le Havre, all games that I love and own. Unfortunately, we can't have limited spaces because the game is asynchronous, right? And basically, I don't want to give somebody because they were online at midnight on Monday, they got to take all the good spaces. So we don't do anything that involves simultaneity or speed of placement. It is all asynchronous. But as an example of what we can do, Pumpkin, is so this is the fishing dock. Okay. And the fishing dock lets you, believe it or not, fish. And, you can fish with a rod or you can fish with a net. Now, it says, fishing net, you get an extra supply. But what happens every week is we update the Angler's Almanac. And so, for example, last week, the Angler's Almanac was the overfishing progress was at 37. So enough people in total had fished the week prior that this week the fishing became scarce. And as a result, when you got a critical success, instead of yielding 5 supply, it only yielded 4 supply. So basically, I can't track people on like a day-to-day or minute-to-minute basis, but I can take the actions of the community over the course of the entire week. Because again, I want to be very fair to people who maybe they don't get on until literally the last day of the last minute of the week. They get on Sunday night and they have to use all their downtime actions. I don't want to fuck that person over just because they couldn't get online. But and then every week there's also a different random event that affects the fishing. So for example, this past week, which just ended, there was a jellyfish bloom and nets couldn't be used this week. And the reason why that's interesting is because nets are pretty cool because nets grant you an additional, so they have the trawling special rule. If you use a fishing net, you get an extra supply every time you fish, but it counts as an additional progress towards overfishing. So whenever you successfully fish, it increases overfishing by 1, but whenever you successfully fish with a net, it increases the progress towards overfishing by 2. And so while fishing with a net gets you more supply, aka fish, then Jacob Online, I created all these. Dragonbane has absolutely none of this. I mean, look, if you want to call this a partial Stardew Valley TTRPG, you wouldn't be entirely wrong. I mean, after all, if you played, you could even make it onto dun 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 the rare catches list. Maybe you could be one of the first people in the game. to catch a salt pike or a rockfin perch or a shimmer bass or a legendary emberfin. For example, I see that we have Orcus Sun. Orcus Sun is a known fisherman who, with their character Rena, was the first person to catch a rock bass. Pretty sick. Where's the rock bass? There it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Rockfin perch. So there you go. Look at that. There's a rockfin perch. A hardy, stone-colored fish whose scales resemble river rock, making it difficult to spot in the shallow, rocky waters. Its camouflage allows it to ambush smaller prey and elude predators, and fishermen often mistake it for a part of the riverbed until it darts away in a flash. You get 2 prestige points, 2 supply, and 1 wealth. However, we also had, you can see here, that Forsyke, who is also in the chat. Forsyke has caught not just a rare catch, but so far the game's only legendary catch, which is that Forsyke, with their character Squackles, managed to catch the legendary Emberfin. And the Emberfin granted them 32 prestige points, 8 supply, also 2 knowledge, influence, mana, and a essence of fire. It says rare, but it should be uncommon. In addition, the Emberfin gave the entire town a bonus downtime action, or 2 bonus downtime actions, because of its incredibly fulfilling and fiery meat. But so far, that's the only legendary catch that we've gotten. And there's actually mythic catches near the bottom. Dun, dun, dun. Anyways, so some people play it because they want to catch cool fish. You know, I'm here for it. I want to make it fun. So yeah, we're just trying to make some fun actions. Star Derrick Valley. I mean, it's pretty close at this point to Star Derrick Valley. I mean, again, what I wanted to create with the town game was an asynchronous game that people could play when they only have maybe an hour or 2 a week to dedicate to the game. And part of the key with that is, figuring out what the town needs and going to the events, seeing what the challenge events are, realizing, oh, okay, the town needs a lot of supply. The town needs a lot of wealth. How can I generate that? What's the best way? Let me optimize my path. Let me look at my character. What skills do I have? What random events are occurring this week? What boons do I have? What banes do I have? And then plan out an optimal strategy to try to help the town out the best. Now, some people are like, oh, town only takes me 5 minutes. Yeah, if you just go to the weapon training space and spam train, then your whole game is over. I mean, yeah, you're right. That took 5 minutes. But in theory, like, for example, this week, this just dropped today. This is the new, this season's first challenge event. It's called Breaking Waters, or Breaking Waves, right? It requires 30 progress units, so 30 ticks of the clock. It has to be done by the end of week 6. We're at the beginning of week 3. And basically, the hurricane season is coming, and they have to rebuild the ancient and weather-worn break wall. Otherwise, the gales will destroy the town. And the entire community needs to come up with 30 progress, and the progress is each bundle is 10 supply. So the community needs to come up with 300 supply to dedicate to this. And if they fail, the effect is the following locations are permanently destroyed: fishing dock, beachcombing, Sapphire Beach, dockside market, supply depot, shipping pier. Additionally, all player character ships must roll on the ship destruction table with a bane. So that's what happens if they fail. So the PCs and the entire game could go, fuck it, we don't care. And that's fine. But some people might go, okay, I need to get a lot of supply. What's the best way for my character to get a lot of supply? and then figure out an optimal plan. And not only that, you may need to work or want to work with other PCs. So that's how you make it into a more engaging co-op game. So it's asynchronous, but I'm imagining it being sort of asynchronous, but you're still planning and working together with your fellow PCs so that you can overcome these challenges together. And by the way, it's not just about overcoming the challenges. Ideally, you're overcoming the challenges, and in doing so in an efficient enough manner that you still have extra time, extra resources to build up the town, to engage in your personal projects, to engage in upgrading town buildings, to, as Orcus-son is saying, right? They managed to build a hunting lodge. Now, they didn't have to build that, but the town generated enough extra, supply, wealth, knowledge, etc., that they were able to also spend some time on this. So it's again, if you've ever played worker management games, it's about increasing your efficiency and making the best choice. Now, but the difference is we test your PC, because a lot of the actions in the game, your PC, needs to be good at that thing. Dragonbane has a hunting and fishing skill. So when you go to the fishing docks, you have to have a good hunting and fishing. So yes, it's very much inspired by Pandemic. It's also actually inspired by Battlestar Galactica as well, the co-op game. So yeah. So you can see here Force saying, my most efficient source of supply might be fishing, but I don't want to cause overfishing and hurt us in weeks 5 and 6. What's interesting, Force, is that normally this would be considered actually an insane event, but it actually might be hurting you right now. Is this week the random Angler's Almanac event is called Silver Scales, which is the waters swarm with silverfin, darting in shimmering clouds just beneath the surface. They're small and bony, hardly enough to fill a belly, but their lustrous hides are prized by jewelers and merchants a lot. What they lack in meat, they make up for a coin. This week, instead of getting 3 supply when you succeed, you get 2 supply and 1 wealth. Now, that's better. Wealth is a more rare resource than supply. But if you're trying to maximize supply because you need to build a break wall, this is actually kind of a debuff in some ways, unless there was a way that you could use your wealth to acquire more supply. Say, maybe the supply depot, where you can make a bartering check, which allows you to trade 1 wealth and convert it into supply. So there you go. And of course, as always, now, as an example of this, Supply Depot can only be used twice per week. But if you spend an influence, you can activate the preferred customer trait, and then you can take this action even if you are at the limit. Now, ordinarily, you might not want to do that, but if you really needed a lot of supply, you could spend an influence and take this action a 3rd time. You could spend another influence and take this action a 4th time. Etc., etc. Maybe your character is really good at the languages skill, in which case you can choose to engage with the worldly trader ability. Optionally, before attempting the bartering skill roll, you may first make a languages skill roll with the following effects. If you succeed on the languages skill roll, you get a boon, which is like advantage in D20 5e experience, on the upcoming bartering roll, guaranteeing that you're likely to get the success or maybe even a dragon, letting you trade potentially up to 5 times 1 wealth to 4 supply. So with this 1 roll, you could convert 5 wealth into 20 supply. So, which anybody who's fished will tell you is a lot of supply. But you have to have the wealth. Where do you get the wealth from? I don't know. That there's other places to get wealth, including theoretically going on adventure, because wealth is, you can convert gold and treasures and jewels and gems and gold that you get on adventure into wealth resource. So, anyways. It's 3 a.m. I must be lonely, huh? Haven't she said, baby? Anyways, long story short, I'm excited. The game is going well, but it is taking up a lot of my time. And, it's interesting seeing the design challenges from the way that people are interacting it with the ways I did not expect. And it's very, humbling, but in a good way. It proves that this is a hard science. And when I talk about how hard this, when I always say, like, people who say they're game designers, I go, I need to take a step back. And, it's one of the reasons people are like, oh, Derek, when are you going to go launch something? When are you going to kickstart something? And I go, guys, this is a silly little mini game for, 60 of my patrons. Can you imagine me trying to release something for thousands of people? Oh my God, it would destroy me.
$10. Thank you, always giving your all. I've learned a lot from your streams.
Well, thank you, B. I appreciate you appreciating me. That's really cool. And again, I know not everybody loves me. Some people think I'm a condescending asshole, and I don't know that they're entirely wrong, but I do hope that you learn something. And so this is me learning, alongside you all. And obviously I've been talking about RPGs for a long time. It would be cool to create one or design one or think about one, but I think this may sound crazy, but I think, B, it's like sometimes I worry, again, this will sound condescending and it'll sound conceited. I don't mean it to be. Sometimes I worry that I know too much. I've read so many RPGs, even before this channel ever started. So for me, it's almost like there's so much knowledge swirling around in my head, and I have so many ways that I know that it can go wrong, and then even me implement something and it still goes wrong. Does that make sense? It's like, how do these other people do it? And again, some people are just way smarter than me, which is awesome. Cough, cough, Mark Seifter. But I think other people, they just have this like naive bravado, and they just say, fuck it, we ball, and they put their game out there. And maybe they know it's not perfect, or maybe they know it's got flaws. Maybe they don't even know that it has flaws, and they just say, I don't care, it's good enough. Ship. I just can't do that, It's true. People do want to skip play. That's the hard part. Playtesting is by far the hardest part, So. And again, I mean, I'm going through all this. I'm going through all this work for a game, for 60 patrons. Like, this isn't like, I'm not like designing World of Warcraft here for 1 million people. I can only imagine what they had to go through. True. I mean, I do think some people are very good, and they can identify a lot of problems before they are implemented. And again, this is an instance of where I thought I had solved the problem, and I did, but then I introduced another one, arguably another two. But part of the reason that happened is because I failed to appreciate that these islands were going to be the size of fucking Australia. Well, that's the idea, Hardrick. All of our resources are it's complicated, but yes, they could. That's what I'm trying to say.
Orcuson tipped $10. Fuck it, we gobble.
Oh, that is very, 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 very good. Do we still have it? No. Gobble dice, in effect. I didn't even hate the idea that just the name was terrible. Thank you, Orcus son. Somebody may have left a comment on the video. They were like, I was so annoyed by the sound. I hated every minute of it, but I really appreciated the commitment to the bit. So I give it permission. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I don't 100% agree with Matt Colville's. I've been a patron of his for a long time. I've watched his videos for a long time. I don't agree with everything he says. I think he's a little bit too like, I'm the author and I get to decide what happens and what's cool for me. And sometimes some of his advice leans a little bit too railroady for me, which I don't like. But generally speaking, I mean, I think that he has the right mindset when it comes to really playtesting and saying, nope, this isn't working. Fuck it. We're scrapping it and we're starting over, or we're going in a different direction, or it was very clearly apparent it wasn't working. And that's tough to let go of your darlings like that is really tough. I would admit it'd be really tough for me. to do that as well. This is also going to sound strange, but one of the reasons I don't want to create a new RPG, and I would rather create an RPG for people, or rather would create something extra for things that somebody's already playing, is because, no offense to all my friends out there who have made games, I don't want to be another book that ends up on somebody's shelf that they kickstarted because it looked cool and they like the creator, but they never actually play. And like if I make if I make something, damn it, I want people to fucking play it, you know? And I'm guilty of that, you know? And so a lot of times when people are like, oh, why don't you design your own game? And I was like, because look, let's say I design my own game, and let's say I get, you know, between my patrons, I have 500 plus, actually I have like 550 patrons, and I have 550 patrons. I have 15,000 YouTube subs. You know, let's say I get 1,000 or 1,500 backers, right? Fantastic. 1,500 people get my game. Maybe eventually it's on Drive-Thru RPG and another couple hundred people pick it up. 2,000 people have my game. That's amazing. But how many of those people are actually going to be playing my game? You know, probably nothing. You know, probably very few. And so again, that's where I'm like, I would rather, you know, make a cool mega dungeon for Shadow Dark, or I would rather make, you know, cool content for Daggerheart. I would rather make, you know, my variant of Daggerheart, right? Derek Heart, or Nightheart, as sometimes people have called it, Dragonheart, where I fundamentally fuck up the game in an attempt to instill some sort of weird numeric centrality, which I really appreciate. Crazy Zen bullet, insane. But yeah, I mean, so, you know, I would rather create, you know, something like that than create something like, you know, yes, Dodeca Heart. That's what we should call it. And anyways, and I think that'd be a lot of, because then at least, you know, designing, you know, I am not such a, again, you know, I've always thought that artists make it for themselves, designers make it for other people. That's a great way to put it. And I'm not some like avant-garde person who's like, I just want to get my vision out into the world. No, I'm not. I want to make cool shit that people are gonna, you know, gonna use and will actually be excited to play with. And so, you know, I respect that there are popular games and there are less popular games, and you know, it might be cool for your artistic integrity to make your own game, but it's like, you know, you're trying to even if people buy it, that's the other difference. This is a difference between me. So maybe there is an ego. Maybe it is. You tell me, chat, if this is an ego thing. And by the way, I won't feel bad if you tell me it's an ego thing. There are a lot of people out there who I did my Kickstarter. I made $1 million. I made $1.5 million. I made $750,000. A bunch of people kickstarted it. You know, I got several thousand Kickstarters. They bought the premium package. They bought the collector's edition with the ribbon. And I know in my heart of hearts that maybe I'm not, assuming I'm not completely deluded, I know that very few of these people are going to be playing this game. And even then, they're not going to be playing this game in a year. It's going to end up on a lot of shelves. But I don't care. Fuck it, I got paid, son. And I'm going to take that $1.5 million to the bank. And that's good enough for me. Scoreboard. Look, I'm not going to lie. I'm not working anymore. They laid me off. I could use some money. But I would rather make something that people are actually going to play. Now, so is that an ego thing? Now, am I deluded enough? Am I crazy enough to think that like, I will be the one who breaks the fantasy heartbreaker curse. I will create the game that will pull you away from their D&Ds and their Dagger Hearts and their Draw Steels and their Pathfinder 2s and their Call of Cthulhu's, and they will all come and play my game. No. Of course I'm not that deluded, you know? But I also think that this is like as much of a fucking unicorn as you are going to get. Okay? Like, this is the high watermark for what you can get in terms of like people adopting a new game and really going deep in it and being like, wow, there's actually kind of a community around this. And it's actually being played at cons. And look, I have zero delusions that anything I could ever make would even come close to approaching the popularity of what Kelsey did with Shadow Dark and the kind of community that she has built up around the game. I think she herself would tell you that if she had to do it again, it might not work out. It might work out differently. All right. It was the right time, right time, right place, COVID, out of COVID, OGL, it was just, there was a lot of factors, So she'd be the first one to tell you that. But it's also a fantastically designed and put together product, and it really gripped people because it was OSR in a way that was available to people who were looking for something that wasn't D&D. But the truth of the matter is, in their heart of hearts, they didn't want to actually learn a new game system. They wanted to still basically play D&D, and Shadow Dark is what gave that to them. So again, I have no delusions, but at least I can, Kelsey got paid too. She made a lot of fucking money on this and continues to make a lot of money on this. Plus, man, I go to these cons now. I'm on the vendor side. I see these things flying off the shelves. She's getting paid. But more so than that, it's also a question or a situation where people are actually playing her game. And for me, and she won some Ennies. That's nice. I think that'd be cool. I appreciate and I know Ennies are kind of a popularity award, but I appreciate the recognition and the fact that you do have to get nominated or whatever. But for me, I think it's cool that like people would be out there actually playing Shadow Dark. That I could walk into a con and walk around and look down and be like, wow, look at all these people playing the game I made. That's awesome. Now, I have no delusions that I could make a TTRPG and people would actually play it. I think that, this is a lightning in the bottle situation. Kelsey's got a great mix of again, skills, community, timing, ability, pedigree, legacy, the whole 9 yards, design chops. And she did it. I don't got that. But that's why I'm kind of like, well, but maybe I could make something that at least people would really use or they would really engage with, So anyways, that was my big spiel there. So Pumpkin says it doesn't ego. I don't think it's ego. I don't know. It's something. I don't know if it's ego or not, but and right, exactly. Mateo, you said it exactly. It's just like I was saying. It hit at the exact right time post OGL, but it was also a really fantastic product, Sure, Zen. I mean, I just, there's some really great games out there, and it's just like I understand that they are, they are kind of an artistic vision, and I think they're amazing, and we'll come on here and we'll praise the hell out of their mechanics, and we will love them to death. But the chances are very slim that it's ever going to make, many people's tables, which I think is which is unfortunate because again, I want this idea of like, I want people who are excited about a game, want to play that game. So again, I don't want to say I want to piggyback because it's not quite right either, but I would be much more excited to help people with a game system that they already enjoy and they're already crazy and zany about, rather than be like bold enough to say like, no, I'm going to make you throw away and cast down those false games that you are playing with, and then you will come to know the truth and the light that is my one true game. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want you to stop playing your game that you love. I love that game too. I want to stand on the shoulders of giants. Absolutely. For example, I've said it a million times. Daggerheart's great. I love Daggerheart. I think the druid is fucked up, and I would design it very differently. And not just because I think it's kind of imba as fuck, which isn't really much of a problem in a game that isn't very spiky, I admit. But it's more of because like, I just think it's really boring. And I think, I think I could do it. I don't even want to say better. I think I could do it differently in a way that is pleasing to me, and I think would be pleasing to a lot of other people, while also potentially dealing with some of the imba issues. Full stop. So that's kind of where I'm at. That is correct, Forsyth. That is correct. That is 100% correct. What is IMBA? IMBA means imbalanced. Imbalanced. It's not even a question, Forsyth, of it being flawed. It's that it is unrealistic for anyone to expect that anyone will play your game. That's what I'm getting at. I don't want to make a game and then make a ton of. For example, obviously, the worst case scenario would be like I don't get that sort of artistic integrity by being like, I made the game of my dreams, and no one bought it, and no one will ever play it. But I'm okay with that. That's not me. You know, one of the reasons when I got out of insurance and I started trying different things, and I got into, you know, I'd always dabbled in photography, but I wanted to do it professionally. I started a photography business. During COVID, photography business got shut down, and I got into woodworking, and I learned it, and I applied my craft, and I basically spent the entire, 18 months of COVID teaching myself high-end furniture making. But one of the things that really stuck with me is I said, wow, my whole life, all I've worked with is digital ones and zeros, charts and graphs that no one will ever remember or keep. Wow, look how cool this is. I'm making something that people are going to use. You know, my wood shop burned down last year in my garage. But that doesn't take away that fact that not right now, it's 2 a.m, 3 a.m, but there are dozens of pieces of my furniture that are sitting in people's homes, sitting in people's kitchens and living rooms. And they're using them. And they may not think about that table, but I know that table is being used. That's not just being stored on a dusty shelf somewhere. And I love that. Yeah. I've told this story before. Obvious is talking about the table. The first major project I ever built was Bob's Wormwood style gaming, vault style gaming table. And one of the awesomest things that Bob ever told me was that in his house, his children, okay, when there's a bad weather, tornado warning, Bob's kids know that when the weather's bad, you go to the basement and you get under the big table. Bob is literally instructed his children that in the event of severe weather, tornado warnings, that they are to go and take shelter under the table that I built. Fan-fucking-tastic. I absolutely love that. That is a high watermark. So, and the fact is, Bob's kids play in Bob's kids use the table. Bob plays games on the table with his friends. I love that. It's being used. And that's all I really want for my game, is for people to actually play it and use it, Now, Cinnabos asks a great question. If use is a factor, why not make D&D supplements? Great question. And the answer is full stop, because I don't feel like there's anything I can add to that environment. Because it's not just about one factor. It's about, because number one, that is a space which already has plenty of use, in that respect. Like, I might make somebody a really nice spoon. I don't make spoons, but I might make somebody a really nice spoon, and they add it to their spoon drawer, but they already have 20 spoons. You get what I'm feeling? You feeling what I'm saying, rather? Like, that's an environment that doesn't need the help. Number two, I don't particularly feel like I'm in a position where I have a lot to offer that space. Number one, because I don't have the kind of breadth of experience that I think you would need. Now you might say, Derek, what the fuck do you know about Daggerheart? The game just came out a few months ago. Okay, true, but I've been playing PBTA games for 15 years, and there's a lot of core elements of Daggerheart that are tied into that. I've also played a lot of TCG games and card games, and there are elements, believe it or not, to Daggerheart, which I do think are very card game factored informed. So, Forsyth, I love that people are playing Dragon Tide and enjoying themselves, and cool. I make let's assume for a moment that every single person there, they wouldn't be, but let's assume that every single person there is only there for Dragon Tide. You know, I'm making 60, you know, 60 times 10. I'm making $600 a month. Well, Patreon takes their cut and the processing fees take their cut, but you know, you get my point. That's cool. That's awesome. That's great. Fantastic. That pays for my homeowners association bill. But I do love that they're playing it and they're enjoying it, you know. I don't even know if 5e isn't bad. I mean, I think there's definitely things that you could do for it. It's just a situation where that is not a space that I feel like I have a lot of things to contribute. And I don't have something that I think is unique and valuable to add to that space. Now, if I was more utilitarian, I might say, well, that's the best space to develop for because that's where the most people are going to play and I'll make the most money and yada, 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 yada. But my view isn't entirely utilitarian. It's not entirely driven by, you know, just greed. Sure. Pumpkin said, as much as I hate PF2, I loved NR. So that's an example of you adding on design that people played and loved. And you know, that's a fantastic legacy for Smith. And as much as Smith would pull his hair out at people grousing about things in NR, he loved that, you know, we had at times over 100 people playing it. So that's fantastic, you know. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. There's an absolute tidal wave of third-party stuff out there as well. So I completely agree with that. So anyways, I don't know. But, you know, this is a unique, the only reason I'm talking about all this, by the way, is because this is a unique, 4 or 5 months ago, this was a non-issue. I was working. I had the channel, you know, that was keeping me pretty busy. And, you know, I was working. And so I just did not have time for any of this. And, you know, now I don't. Then, you know, suddenly my life got turned upside down and it was really chaotic, but it was like, go to a convention, go to a convention, go to a convention, go to a convention, go to a convention. So every 2 weeks I was going to a convention or, you know, having to travel for personal issues or for personal reasons, for vacation, but also going to all these conventions. And so now we're through that. That kind of let me, you know, stick my head in the sand. But now that's over. I'm at home. I'm going to be at home essentially for the next, you know, 6 months. What do I do with all this time? I don't know. You know, I can't stream 40 hours a week, so I got to do something. Yeah, I'm still really excited about Duality Digest. I just need to figure out a way to do it in a way that maintains integrity, doesn't overpromise / underdeliver, is fair and equitable to the people involved, doesn't look like shit, both from a design and layout perspective and from a art perspective, has some sort of plan or structure, has some way that we can put some sort of constraint or modicum around rigor, balance, testing. I don't want to just create shovelware. I've been a member, you know, as part of I'm a data guy. I joined almost every single major content creator's Patreons at some point over the last 5 years, especially when I was getting started. And a lot of them would produce monthly PDFs. By and large, they were not good. And by and large, I will say that they were created through unpaid and unskilled labor. And I just don't want to put my imprimatur on that. You know, I don't want to, that's not what I'm about, you know? So, are there any that I would shout out as being good? Yeah, the stuff JP Couvert puts out is really, really good. And the stuff that Matt Colville used to put out, I don't know if he still does, but that was good. Those were both really good. Those are two that definitely stood out to me. Arcadia is, that's why I thought, I don't think they make it anymore. That's why I said, I don't think it, I'm like, I don't recall that. I mean, I've been so busy, I wouldn't have checked it, but it was really good while it lasted. Yeah. So it was really, really good. Yeah. I mean, I do like to have I have a lot of different interests and I have a lot of different things. And, you know, like for example, the ice rink is going to open up soon. And that means I get to start going ice skating again, you know, because now I have the time. I can just go in the middle of the day. I can go to the lunch skate and I can go ice skate. And I love ice skating, you know. As much as it ended last in the poll, I'd love to see Shadow Deep. Yeah, Shadow Deep is another one that's... Shadow Deep is a very high risk project. And the reason I say high risk is because to do it well and to do it to the scale that I want to do it would require a tremendous amount of effort. Now, if I am just phoning it in, again, like I said, a lot of these mega dungeons fucking suck because they are just designed so poorly with minimal interlinking, tons of shitty empty rooms, horrible. I want to create a legitimately good experience. But it is very, very, very time intensive. Now, that being said, it's also something that if you do it right, could potentially reach a large number of people, including people who are outside of our community in terms of a Kickstarter. Because again, I've tried to be as transparent about this as I possibly can. I would be completely fucked if I didn't have the patron and I didn't have the tips and I didn't have the support of you. Full stop. I would be like, well, nobody's like, oh, Dirk, you'd have to go get a job. Yeah, let me tell you something. I have quite a few friends who have been unemployed and are employed still because getting a job isn't walking into one of those is not a thing that you can do as easily anymore, especially somebody in my field, because my field is getting fucking just hammered to shit by AI. So I would be in real trouble. So I'm really appreciative of that. But let me be clear here. The Patreon and the tips from YouTube and the percentages that they take and all that other stuff, it's really awesome. And most people, it was awesome when I was working. It doesn't replace my high 6-figure job. So what a Shadow Deep could do, especially if it's a bigger book, see, I don't, that's the point, Derek. Derek is cutting to the heart of it here. He says, I'd encourage you to cut scope on Shadow Deep just to make it more achievable. You have the right connections and position to get your message out. But if I'm cutting the scope, Derek, what are we even doing here? But realistically, something like Shadow Deep, I don't know. I'm not saying it would be like this thick, right? But realistically, it would be a, this is 650 pages. It would realistically be a 500, page tome. And the reason I think that's important is because something like that, when you kickstart something like that, you can expect to have a high, dollar amount associated with it. I'm getting way into economics here of printing and I didn't know any of this stuff, by the way, until a year and a half ago when I started hanging out with Roll for Combat, and Steven and stuff like that. But the long story short is it's better to print a big book than it is to print a small book. Full stop. And you make you make more money, printing. A lot of people make a mistake and they think that people make more money on PDFs than they do books. And that's just not right. Because even nowadays, the PDF is $30 and then you get the big hardback and it's, $80. And you're like, oh, they'd rather you get the PDF. It's 100% profit. No, they'd rather you get the book because that book that is $80 or $90 or $100 probably costs $5 to print. So they make $95. Now, granted, there's shipping, there's other problems. I'm not arguing that there are other concerns that have to come up. And you obviously have to be able to actually get the books printed, which means you need the cash, But people will pay top dollar for a printed product. Think about how much, some of these people, Vin is a great example of this. Derek complains about this. Me, not Derek Rawlings, me, Derek. When we're like, oh, this PDF is $35. What the fuck, But I'll buy a $100 book and not even bat an eye. So take care, Yuval. Anyways, long story short, from a hey, Derek wants to do some sort of project that actually could make him enough money to like financially secure him for a good chunk of time. I'm not talking like 20 years. I'm talking about over the next year or two. That could be a good proxy for, the job that I did have. It would be a Shadow Dark Mega Dungeon because it has the connection to a really popular, really great game. My channel, my style, people know me for being about Mega Dungeons and talking about Mega Dungeons. It's like you can go watch hundreds of hours of me talking about about this stuff. But it is a huge investment of time. It is a huge investment of money because of the art and the effort. And if it flopped, it would be a disaster because I could spend all that time producing it and then it generates no sales. So that's the risk. Because again, if you throw something together in a month or two and then it flops, big deal. But like something like that would take a lot of time. Oh, it would have to be Kickstarter for sure, Mateo. But we talked about this before. We did a poll on this day, like how much of the dungeon would need to be done for you to feel comfortable kickstarting it, and most people said mostly all of it. I think people don't want to see like a thing where it's like, hey, why don't you back this on a hope and a prayer, So for a lot of people, it like basically kind of almost needs to be done before they'll even kickstart it. So, the digest is a much lower bar of entry, right? For the digest, we're talking about a 24-page zine, so it's much lower. But again, that's a whole new skill set for me, and again, I don't want to. There's a lot of factors of difficulty for that, right? Yeah, it's true. Kickstarter is basically just a pre-order system nowadays. You're 100% correct, Copper. But it's because nobody wants to take the risk of committing to my gigantic print orders and these gigantic print runs that, isn't there. And that's true. First project. Well, and this is something, though, that is different, which is that, a lot of people kickstart and people are like, who the hell are you? And one of the reasons that Kelsey did so well with her first Kickstarter is because she had been designing modules and people signed up for her newsletter, and she had like 10,000 people signed up for her newsletter. So people are like, wow, you got to build this community. Well, I kind of already have that, right? I have 15,000 YouTube subs. I've got, 500 patrons. So in theory, there's at least a good chunk of people who believe in something. Of course, they also know that I'm always sitting here talking about, I'm not a designer. You should never listen to people like me. We're just people on YouTube. It's true. That's true. PDFs just suck in general. And also, too, there's also the crazy shit, right? Because Derek's crazy. And this is when, like, Steven Glicker says, Derek, you're crazy. Right. So you would prefer draft memory skip. I don't blame you, Zen Bullet. I don't think you're wrong there. But I'm also crazy. And Steven says, you're nuts. This is why no one ever does this. No one will do that. Because remember how I talk about how, like, I would want to make 2 books. I would want to make the nice book with the really pretty art, and it's well laid out. It's got a lot of lore. And it's the thing that as a GM, you take to bed, right? You got your glass of water. You open up the nice book. It's got the ribbons. It's beautiful. It's laid out. And it's something you can really engage with and indulge in and look at all the pretty pictures. And then I want a completely separate version that is designed for use at the table, right? That it's spiral bound, flat laying. It's black and white. The paper isn't glossy, so that you can write on it and stick little tabs and little Post-its in it. And it's got little worksheets for you to track hit points or whatever. I don't know, like almost like a workbook, rather than a book. And Steven's like, well, not only would you never do that because people wouldn't buy it twice. He goes, but then you'd have to do the layout twice, and nobody wants to do that twice. And I'm like, see, I hear that, and I go, but that's what I want. That's what I want. So, like, why wouldn't I make what I want? That's what I want. Well, you're making the core. So again, this is another example of Derek being completely unreasonable. How does the PDF help me when I'm playing at the table? What are you? Are you using your laptop at the table? No, we don't do that. In fact, I only ever use PDFs when I'm not at the table. When I'm like traveling and I want to, that's even worse. But yeah, Rules Compendium is great. It's straight. Right. I am also a Luddite. I also hate having phones and computers at the table. Like I said, it's been a really weird experience for me in our last PF2 campaign because I'm playing the Eldamon and I don't know how I don't know how anything else works anymore because they updated it for remaster and I don't know what any of the words are. So I actually play on my computer and my laptop and I hate it so much. My friends are all over the country. We've never sat down at a real table. Look, I respect that is how some people have to play, and that is totally awesome. I'm happy that you guys get to play. I'm simply saying PDFs are not yes, the obvious uses PDFs for that game as well. But I'm trying to think. Where did I put that? Yeah, so like for example, Goodman Games. Goodman Games released this Into the Borderlands reprint, sheet thick, and it's the original module plus an updated version for 5e and all this other stuff. So what Smith and I did is we basically hacked apart the PDF into different parts. Like this is the monsters, the items, and the spells. This is the actual Cave of Chaos itself. These are the Borderland area. And we've just made these like super thin, fold flat. You can fold it in on itself. It'll lay completely flat. It's just got, basically computer printer paper. And these are, because using this at the table is a horrible pain in the ass, but it's nice to have as a reference. But like when the group goes into the actual cave, when the group goes into the actual cave, I just look how thin this is. This is how big the actual Caves of Chaos is. It's nothing. It's 40 pages, Yeah, it's because they, I'm mad because I didn't get all of them when they were out, and now they're kind of hard to find. So I am mad about that. I got Isle of Dread, Keep on the Borderlands, and I'm not gonna lie. Part of me, I don't know what I would run this in, but I tried running this once when I was a kid. It did not end well. And then I tried running the sequel to it, which is called Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, which was a 3rd edition adventure by Monty Cook. That was going okay. And then I was sick one day, and Smith ran the campaign for me instead as the GM, and he TPK'd the party. There was some sort of sacrificing involved because the Book of Vile Darkness had just come out. Anyways, long story short, that campaign to end with it. But I don't know how I would actually do this. I would probably have to do it with like the patrons or something. But there's a part of me that I just wish I could just like run cool games and somehow make a living out of that without it being like this hard Scrabble life that these professional DMs do. Cause like, I don't want to actually be paid to be the GM on a session to session basis, Like, I just like, it's cool when like someone's my patron and then like, get into one of my games and like, I don't know, that feels like a much more pleasant transaction to me. But anyways, long story short, I would love to run Temple of Elemental Evil. I don't know if I'd run it like in 5th edition or if I would run it in like Shadow Dark or something. But I've always wanted to run this. Now, to be fair, this is a fairly faceless dungeon crawl, mega dungeon, but it's so classic. So it's more of like a history thing here for me. Are you going to review Nimble at some point? I am. Good chance I might do it this week. A lot of people have been asking for it. Yeah. So it's a good chance. There's definitely a good chance that we might do that. I got the game. I mean, it's very short. I mean, we could practically read the whole game. And again, Evan, the creator of the game, was nice enough to send me a very nice box set with some cool little doodads and stuff like that. So, yeah, well, I'd like to return the favor to him as well. The Book of Vile Darkness. I was TPK by multiple Monty Cook adventures in 3rd edition law. Which adventure? You said multiple adventures. Are we talking like City by the Spire? Are we talking like Bane Warrens? I'm curious what adventures that you played in that you got TPK'd on. Severed Bronin says, I run paid games to cover small expenses and some bills. I hate every bit of monetizing my passion. Yeah, and that's basically how I feel. And like, I know that might sound silly because you're like, Derek, you have a Patreon. Yeah, but it's different. I don't know. For me, it's different. It is different. So capitalism is very hard. That, Mark Clore, that is a very fair reason. Trying to run a big dungeon in Pathfinder 1, finding the huge list of feats and items of NPCs brought me back memories and completely. Ooh, Red Handed Doom is sweet. I ran that once. It was a lot of fun. That was like the one time in our campaign that like a Godzilla in the form of a druid really, really took the campaign hard. And like they weren't even like trying to be optimal, but it was just so powerful. It was ridiculous. Oh, okay, you don't remember. This was like 12. You were like, I was like 12. Okay, all right, fair enough. I mean, Monty Cook has written some really cool adventures. Some of them very, very good. Yeah. Anyways. So, that'll do it. A lot of stuff. Thanks for hanging out with me. We're going to, look, we're going to talk about Dagger. I mean, somebody made, someone smarter than me. I don't know. It might have been Derek Rawlings. I don't know. Somebody said, like, you should stream 3 times a week. Once about Daggerheart, once for a first look, and then once for, miscellaneous extra, whether that's Shadow Deep or GM advice or a PF2 stream or Draw Steel or 4th edition or generic advice or whatever. That actually seems like a pretty reasonable thing. I get not everybody likes Daggerheart. That's fine. I mean, I'm not a one true game person either. As much as I love Daggerheart, I do think that there's it's not the perfect game. It's really good, but it's not perfect and doesn't scratch every itch, especially if your itch involves hyper realistic simulationism. But I don't want to get like too restricted. That doesn't sound like something you would say. All right, fair enough. I don't remember who said it. I thought it was you. You're very reasonable. I don't want to be like too like locked into like, because one of the things I like is that I can just switch. We can. Oh, that's interesting. We can go do this. We can do this. So I don't want to get too locked into anything like that. But we'll figure out something. But I was gonna say, in 8 days, Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered comes out. And I think I am going to play that. And I think I'm going to play that live on Twitch. So that'll be fun. It's been like, it's probably been like, 25 years since I played that game. But it has probably been I think it's been 6 years since I've played a video game. I think 29. I might have played some Total War during the pandemic, but I don't think I did. So I think because I was starting the YouTube channel by then. So yeah, I think 2019 is the last time I played a video game. So yeah. Which is crazy, I'm sure, for most of you to even think about something like that. But yes, it's been 6 years since I've played a video game. So anyways, that'll be interesting. Something to do, something to have fun. And again, I'm not going to probably dedicate myself to a specific stream time for that. I'll probably just play it randomly. And again, that'll only be on Twitch. Because I don't want to flood this channel with a bunch of nonsense video game stuff. But if you want to watch it over there, we will. As a reminder, you can get over there and sub and give me your Prime sub if you want to support me and you don't want to give me any real money. I'll take your Jeff Bezos dollars. I appreciate that. Or you can save them for when we start doing Final Fantasy Tactics. That'd be cool too. Hopefully we'll get 10 or 15 people over there. The industry is on fire. The market is incredibly oversaturated. Well, to be clear, I have zero intent on making a dent in any sort of streaming video game space. It's merely that I said I was going to play this game, and everyone's like, you should stream it. What? So eventually we'll go back. I want to do Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy Tactics. Maybe we'll just play through all the Final Fantasies. That'd be kind of cool. I never did play Final Fantasy 3. So that's the only I haven't played the Final Fantasies after 12 either. So I was supposed to say that's the only Final Fantasy I never played, but I forgot that they kept making them after I stopped playing them. So there's that. I mean, I play TTRPGs on the internet. I see backseaters all the time. Oh, well, that's the good news, Pumpkin. See, I can get around it by saying I'm not actually playing a new video game, some bullshit AAA title. I'm playing a 25-year-old game. And then after that, I'm going to play Final Fantasy 1, a 40-year-old game or something. So, see, I can avoid all of that nonsense. I mean, and holy shit, I was watching Bob play that Baldur's Gate 3 because he was streaming it, on Twitch. And there was only like 10 or 15 people watching him on Twitch. But I hopped in there and I was on my Gryffindor account and he was like, oh, that must be Derek. And I was watching. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe people play this. The NPCs in that game are so, the ones that are supposedly in your party, oh my God, they're so annoying. They talk so fucking much. And they're all so fucking weird and horny. That game is so weird. I just do not understand how anybody likes that game. Holy crap. So, maybe we can go play Icewind Dale. Okay. We can play Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. We can go play some Throne of Ball. Okay. We'll go play some real games. Okay. Get some AD&D 2nd edition up in this bitch. That'd be fun. People have told me that they were even more horny when the game was first released. That actually came up when I was in chat. Someone's like, oh, you should have seen it in the beginning. And I said, how is that possible? The NPCs are super horny. That's why the game is popular. You know what's disturbing to me? That is probably somehow true. Now, they had to nerf the horniness. Now, here's the thing. They weren't really, though, and it's been a long time since I played them, so to be clear, it might be different. But the other difference is I hate voice acting, and it's a lot different when the horniness is like 8-pixel characters that are like this big on your screen, and you're just zoomed out, and there's like a big text bar, and you're reading it, versus like this weird, like full frontal facial, like, how about we get naked and fuck? It's just very different when it's very different. And I'm going to leave it at that. Copper Blint, you've ended the session. You've ended the stream. You can romance a bear is a very common selling point for Baldur's Gate 3. So we're going to leave it there. And we'll see you next time. Because I'm not topping that one.
Dungeons and Dragons. Satan's game.
So we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with me. Should be back Tuesday, which will be my pseudo birthday stream. Again, I don't think we're going to do the 24 hours. I don't think I'm up for it just yet, but we'll do it at some point just because I want to see what we can manage. But I'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Good night, everybody. Peace.